the landowners meeting to order, and this is Saturday, September 23rd, 2023, and it's just after 10 o'clock, about 10:04 according to the clock on the wall behind you. Present, the Board of Supervisors, Chairman Jim Bradford, Vice Chair Jennifer Finazzo, John Salucci, also present are Ronald Edenfield, our engineer, Richard Pringle, our attorney, Audrey Mendrez, our manager, and superintendent. They added a new word here. Chris Lawson, secretary treasurer, and all you landowners and guests, and there's everybody signed in. I don't have a count on them. Do I need that, Chris?
No, I'm counting now. I think I've got about 30. I think I have about 30.
About 30?
Mm-hmm. But we just got one of them in.
And you don't need to count.
Okay.
32.
We'll have the number and written down before
32.
we finish. Okay. Mr. Pringle, I guess at this point I turn over the beginning of this to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This meeting was properly noticed. The statute 298.11 subsection 1 requires us to notice the annual landowners meeting twice in the newspaper. That has occurred September 5th and September 12th. Also, the notice has been placed on the website. Also, the notice of the meeting, together with a substantial amount of additional information, has been provided by mail to all of the landowners as well. So the district has actually gone above and beyond the normal statutory requirements for noticing this annual landowners meeting. There are several purposes of this landowners meeting of the district. One purpose is to elect a supervisor. A second purpose is to receive a report of the work done. That can be in the form of several reports. The engineer's report is primarily a report of the work done, but also the treasurer and also the board, and especially the board chair, can report on work done as well. But the purpose of that is to provide to the landowners a description of the work that has been performed over the last year with regard to construction and maintenance of the works of the district. Those are primarily comprised of the canalways and the roadways that serve the district residents.
May I ask a question at this point?
Yes, sir.
I would only ask that we include into that report the amount of time put into FEMA and to grant money and to working with the city of Bonita Springs.
Absolutely, yes, sir. All of those are topics that are related to work that has been done in the last year.
Okay.
And then the third item, generally, that is considered at the annual landowners meeting is the consideration of the compensation paid to the supervisors. There's a statutory provision that provides for compensation to be paid to the supervisors upon approval by the landowners. So those are the three items that need to be covered and dealt with and addressed in this meeting. In the past, there has been a substantial process created and described regarding the election of a supervisor. There is one supervisor's seat up for election this year, and that is the seat held by Supervisor Bradford. Before we begin the process, or the district landowners begin the process of electing a supervisor, however, the statute says that the landowners at this meeting need to take the first step of electing a chair and a secretary for the landowners meeting only. Oftentimes, my experience is that the chair of the Board of Supervisors is elected as the chair, and the secretary of the district is elected as the secretary to keep the meeting minutes. That's the only purpose of the election of the secretary for this landowners meeting. But that is not necessarily the way that it will go, and It is, Mr. Chairman, a decision made by the landowners, so you would entertain a motion from the landowners from the floor for the election of a chair and a secretary. Those are two different actions, can be two different actions. They can be combined in one motion if that's the desire of a landowner to do. And it would require a motion and a second and then a vote of the landowners, Mr. Chairman. That's the way that works. And the supervisors are landowners, so you can make motions as well.
Okay. At this time, we're going to put a motion on the floor for the chairperson for this meeting only. Do we have, you do this by a vote of hands or?
By a motion, normally the way that I do it is by a motion and a second and then a vote on that motion.
So they have to nominate somebody.
I nominate Jim Bradford.
The landowners get to participate in this
Yes,
motion?
that's correct.
Okay, so don't think we're taking over for you. So we need you to speak up.
I second.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Couldn't hear that.
You couldn't hear who she voted for.
Jim Bradford. Thank you, sorry.
So can I, isn't it a little odd that the individual overseeing the election is running for the seat? I think that's a little bit of a conflict.
I don't oversee the elections. There are poll people who do that. I only run the meeting.
And there is no conflict, sir. That's not a conflict. This is for purposes of administering the meeting and chairing this meeting only. It's a ministerial role only.
So you need to call
Okay.
for a vote.
If nobody else is nominated, then
So there's a,
Peter, second.
Mr. Chairman, there's I would define it as a motion, and that has been seconded to select you as the chair of the landowners meeting. And so if you want to call the question on that motion, and by raise of hands would be appropriate of the landowners.
okay. The question's been called, so we need a raise of hands to support
All in
the
favor of?
motion of me being, of
Right.
Jim Bradford being the chairperson of this meeting.
Of this meeting, yes.
And then all those opposed, Mr. Chairman, you would call for that as well.
Those opposed? We have one opposed.
The majority.
Motion carries.
Yes, sir.
Next motion on the floor is for the secretary treasurer of the landowners meeting. We need somebody
Just the
to make a motion.
I nominate Chris Lawson for secretary.
Second the motion.
We have an audience that did. Let's have Mrs. Smith. Okay, we need a vote on the motion to support Chris Lawson as the secretary treasurer of this meeting. Okay, we need a motion for any opposing votes. Motion carries. Chris Lawson will be the secretary treasurer of the landowners meeting. I think, Mr. Edenfield, at this point, would be time for you to give us a report on work performed in the district for the year.
Very good. Pleasure to be here. In attendance at our second annual landowners meeting. Not that it's a news flash, but shortly after last year's meeting, Ian showed up. And Ian managed to occupy a good bit of our time and energy through the past year. But in summary, since that time, we've been working with FEMA, orchestrating and organizing immediately following the storm cleanup of approximately, I believe it was somewhere on the order of about 600 cubic yards of debris from the canal. Oversaw that, engaged contractors, and moved them through that process. Similarly, we've been working with Peter and yourself and others and meeting with FEMA, seeking reimbursement for several projects for which we qualify. That has been underway and still underway. shared with others previously that that's a long-term process, and we'll continue to work on that to get that accomplished. I've also been involved in the Hurricane Mitigation Grant Program. That's a state funding opportunity. That is more in line with the covers the items typically that aren't covered by FEMA. But, generally speaking, those would be things that we can actually do some improvements to our system, and we've targeted several opportunities for system improvements, primarily the modifications to our weir structures and getting those into better condition. We've got one that's failing. We're hopeful that we'll be able to get through the HMGP program some funds to upgrade those to a more operational type facility. Additionally, we worked with the former district engineer who had previously worked on the MS4, the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, which is part of the federal and state National Pollution Discharge Elimination System program. We are a co-permittee with Lee County. That requires annual reports, and we have an annual report coming due October 20th, which we'll be preparing to submit to the state through Lee County to update them on our progress over the course of the last year. We did conduct back in May an inspection with the state and with local county staff to take a look at our facilities. Everything appeared to be in compliance. We've had received no negative comments on that inspection. We did discuss those projects that we do have going forward, where we're working with the HMGP and FEMA to make some improvements to the system. As far as the district right-of-way permitting program, this current year we have at present 23 applications under review. Through the year we have issued 19 new permits, and we've closed out 29 and have conducted on the order of around 255 inspections. With respect to the closed permits, many of those were permits that were issued prior to our tenure. They were issued by Morris Depew, some quite a few years ago, so it's good to get those wrapped up, closed out into the operating stage as opposed to the permitting stage. Relative to the inspections, many of those inspections included repeat inspections of just monitoring sites to make sure that they were in compliance and didn't have any issues with them. It also includes a number of compliance and possible code enforcement actions in that as well. We've also been working with Mr. Frankel's office to update the application documents. Those, I believe, if they haven't gotten to y'all by now, should be there early next week in the final product. The one document that is not complete is the standards handbook, which is more of the technical basis for the design of driveway connections and other right-of-way connections. And that's taking a little bit longer due to the technical nature of some of the edits. So we'll continue to work on that until such time that we do make the revisions and bring it to the board for approval. Then the existing document will remain in force and effect. We have conducted some infrastructure maintenance, specifically down on Catskill Pavilion in Pinson, where we've had all the driveways. I understand that historically was a flooding an area that tended to flood more frequently than others. We've had all the driveway culverts cleaned out, as well as the outfall culverts into the perimeter canal have all been cleaned. We recently approved a partial payment on the agreement with Vacuum Dig. I believe Chris has that maybe in your package today for payment. The board did approve 5 days at $3,600 a day for somewhere around $18,000. The less the amount that we've authorized for payment leaves us about $7,700 of approved funds that I would like your concurrence to move forward with cleaning more of the perimeter canal
Yeah,
outfall.
we'll need to do that during a board meeting.
Correct, I'm just bringing that up as an issue. That's an item that we'll be talking about. Roadside mowings continued throughout the year and seem to be keeping up with the pace. We do have a need for an update to the 2005 water control plan. We will work on that this coming year and to incorporate many of the requirements that were not in effect at the time of the 2005 plan amendment was written. So we'll continue to update that document and have that ready for presentation hopefully by this time next year, if not before. We currently have several operations that we're working on. That's canal maintenance solicitation, survey services solicitations. We do have submittals on both of those. We also have the weir modification project that I previously mentioned that we're seeking funding on, detention area improvement project, which we're also seeking funding on, and then an overall system hydraulic and hydrologic assessment. And that concludes the engineer's report for this past year.
Okay, seeing as how you're done, I'm going to go ahead with
Can I
a
ask a
few.
couple questions about the report?
Absolutely.
Okay, on the report, Ron, on the MS4 permits,
Yes.
I'm sure, I don't know if a lot of landowners are aware of what Pulte's doing on the other side of Cockershell, all that big development. And I'm wondering how, when that's all done with that mile long of lakes, retention ponds, and everything, how that's gonna impact our MS4 permitting activities and how we're measured in the event there's a lot of overflow directly or indirectly in our canal system. Are we factoring that in what a future canal system might look like with that potential volume of water, especially when they're doing like, you know, the 100-year flood analysis, things like that?
The system that's being constructed overall, the project, and it's the stormwater system, and I don't want to get into too much detail because this really is a conversation for maybe later today. But the long and the short of it is the stormwater system that's being built, coincident with the Pulte project, is actually a City of Bonita Springs project, and it is covered under their MS4 permit as a co-permittee. So along those lines, that's Bonita Springs. Once it gets into the canal, it doesn't directly affect us from an MS4 permitting standpoint. And there are other considerations and some discussions that we've had with the city regarding interlocal agreements and dealing with the concerns that you have about how it may or may not impact our system. So, but I think that's outside of the scope of this conversation. So.
Okay, one other question, on the right-of-way permitting,
Mhm.
I know a lot of the permits issued initially were Morris Depew, but
Mhm.
you've had a good year now of your firm with new permits.
Mhm.
Are you coming up with an average pricing of the costs associated with the review of the permits and everything else? Do we need to look at an issue where anybody new coming in the community wants to pay for a permit? That, I mean, there's no point in the reserves
Right.
skewed paying for a total stranger coming and doing it. So I think we have, what, $750, whatever the fee is. Are you seeing an averaging now, like a new permit is really $1,200 by the time we're done? Well, then we need to tell people it's $1,200, not $750, because there's no point in the rest of the community paying for a new person coming in.
And we have not done that level of analysis on the fees. We have had a number of projects that have come in just recently that have kind of called this whole fee question to the table. Specifically, we've had situations where individuals are building on a lot that has an existing culvert. And is the application fee a connection fee or is it a review fee? I mean, how do we want to look at that number and whether or not we need to have an accommodation for existing versus brand new? Another question that came up very recently was utilities. Currently, the fee schedule is $50 per application. We've got one application that covers 32 lots. So the potential for impact to the right-of-way with 32 lots involved, I think, is a little more substantial than potential for impact for just a single lot. So do we charge them $50 for 32 lots, or do we charge them $1,600 at $50 a lot? So some of these questions have come up, and what I would like to ask the board to do is to table this until next month, to give us an opportunity to put a package together that looks at those things of what it's costing per application, and provide some recommendations to the board as to, for discussion, to see which direction you want it to go on that.
Perfect, okay, thank you.
You have anything else? Would you like to discuss anything about the internet system and stuff you've put up this year?
Aren't you gonna review all the accomplishments?
I was going to do
Yeah,
that,
you-
but that also comes under your jurisdiction.
Yeah, but I don't want to pat my own self on the back.
One.
Mr. Nagy has something he wants to say. Is that appropriate at this time?
It's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Nagy,
Yeah, just a quick question. A few months
we need
ago-
to come up here to speak. Is that mic turned on?
Yes.
So a few months ago, you passed a motion to implement a escrow fee for these permits for $750. I'm just curious, you're talking about now changing it to 12 and whatever, so it's not enough, but what I took away from that motion, that you passed the motion, was $750 plus another $750. That's what I don't remember that.
No, I don't think that was at all what, if that was stated, that was definitely misunderstood by you. We did not do that.
There was
We don't know enough yet on the numbers.
That was a discussion,
There was
but
a
it
discussion.
ended there.
I think we passed a motion to make it a minimum $750 for now, until you get more data. Now you're saying you've had enough data. Or
It's-
by next month, you should have enough data to start evaluating this, correct?
It's been $750 since we've been on
Right.
the
So
job.
that, it's just coming up for discussion, I guess.
There was a discussion about an additional $75 for reinspection.
Reinspection fees, maybe that's what you're thinking, Dave, is $75 reinspection fees.
Okay.
Wow.
The ultimate goal here, for the purpose of my question, David, is to prevent landowners here from the reserves we have to be subsidizing new people coming in. If it ends up being $1,200, $1,050, whatever it's cost for a new permit and driveway application, basically a curb rate, and the engineering has to make sure they put the pipe in correctly, they have all the right stuff. If it ends up being such, that person should be paying for that, not if we have a flat fee of $750, but then we have bills coming into the district for $1,200, $1,400. We're paying the bills because that's the engineering firm. But where's that coming from? The above $750 is coming from reserves, which is all of our money. Okay? That's the purpose of my
I
question.
appreciate your
Okay.
concerns, I totally agree. I was just, from a process standpoint, I think you'll find in the minutes that a motion was passed to implement a $750 escrow fee. That's my only point.
Okay, I want to interrupt here. If we're gonna continue discussions, we really need you up here, but I know you thought it was done, so, but in the future, people just stay for a minute, make sure it's done, so that everybody can hear you. Thank you very much for your question. Did you want to discuss the internet system at all?
No, you can discuss it.
Internets are not my thing. Okay. In this past year, we've done a number of different things, and my big thing that I try to do, I'm looking at getting the surrounding communities to support the amount of money that you're paying. So if we're paying for the ditch system and stuff around us, the drainage system, etc., it's only fair that everybody else who uses that system shares in that. So we've been working, I actually had a meeting this past Wednesday with the city of Anita Springs, with the city manager, the assistant city manager. Ron Edenfield was present, and their attorney was Skyped in. So with that, it appears that we've come up with a tentative agreement for a certain amount of money. I don't want to say what that is yet because that hasn't been totally worked out. But Along with that, the attorneys are, we're working on an interlocal agreement, which in turn will entitle us to use all of their services at at the same kind of costs that they have. It'll entitle us to using their vehicle of power that they have, different than us, to get state and other grants and things that we may not have been entitled to before. And they're saying that it's the first time that the Water Control District has actually, and maybe they have in the past, Matt's been there about 18 years, I believe, and he indicated that it's the first time this Water Control District has asked for these kind of things. And it looks like they're moving forward with us to help us out in all of this. If this happens, it's gonna set a precedence for us asking Estero to participate in everything to the north of us. It's gonna set a precedence for the state of Florida to have to pay us for the drainage off of Imperial Parkway and I-75 that comes into our canal system. So we're hoping that this is just a beginning, and ultimately along the way, it should. I had high expectations a few years ago that we could reduce our costs internally within our subdivision, and most certainly we should be able to. I would only relate to all of you that along with this, our road project's been in place for a long time. Our culvert pipes have been in need of maintenance and repair for some time, and until those things get taken care of, it's gonna be very hard to determine what the savings might come back to the subdivision. But certainly, it will keep us from having to come back and ask the taxpayers. We're on a flat rate tax system here, so we only have one way to do it, and that's to say you pay $50 more per household or whatever it happens to be, normally done on a percentage base. Fire districts, cities and stuff do millage kind of taxation where they don't have to come back and ask the taxpayers in the same fashion that we do. We're applying for a number of different grants from the state of Florida and Lee County. Benita has tentatively said they will participate in that by possibly paying the difference. That's still open for negotiations. That's all. Then I mentioned the interlocal agreement. Through FEMA, Hurricane Ian, we got the new gates put up. We have, by the way, we've received no money yet from FEMA. We realize their coffers are getting short. Probably when they get this thing settled in Washington, they'll restock those coffers. But anyway, the things that they have agreed to pay us for at this point in time are the new gates you see at the back of the subdivision. The canal and ditch cleanup, 100% of what we paid out this past year for doing that. Repairs to the canal system, such as erosion areas, etc. They replaced all of the signs in our subdivision, which we took the opportunity because everyone that had damage was every single one of them. So we replaced every single sign within the district. Replacement of the weirs, which are the weirs that Mr. Edenfield were referring to, taking those out, putting in new ones, putting in drainage valves in them so that we can regulate the water heights so that we don't have to wait until we have a flood before we can lower the water. So if we know we've got a catastrophic rain event coming, we'll be able to drop the water down in the canal system, allowing us a better ability to store water in our canals before anybody gets flooded. Right now, they're solid concrete. We don't have that ability. The drainage pipes under strike lane up by the railroad track, they have tentatively agreed to replace those with larger pipes with no obstructions. So when things flow through it, they don't get backed up at the railroad track. All engineering fees related to the hurricane, they're agreeing to pay for those. All attorney fees related to the hurricane, they're agreeing to pay for those. So when you see the bills for the attorney and the engineer this year, that's a reflection of the total cost of what we had to pay out. It's not what we might get. So we're expecting to get some of that money back. We also have a program where we post the monthly meeting signs at the beginning of the entranceways to the subdivision. Now I'd like your input on the internet system. Right there.
Okay, so, for the last 2 years, the auditors have dinged the district by not having certain things required. One of which was, updated policies and procedures. So the board actually wrote all the policy procedures, and we saved a lot of money that the district attorney only had to review, not write them themselves. So we wrote them, and then he reviewed them, saved a lot of money. That was one of the things that was on the audit. That's one of the things that was on the audit list. Another significant one on the audit list was we really didn't have a modern, sophisticated landowner interaction type website, which you now see, and that was months into working. Myself and Audrey also supported this, and other board members as well. We basically redid the entire thing with the company out of California, that all they do is host websites for government entities, particularly water districts. A lot of water districts west of the Mississippi they have. They're trying to expand to east of Mississippi, so we're one of them that they're happy to do this. And they make the site compliant with all kinds of federal and state regulations that we don't have to pay for. I mean, we're paying for it, but at a much lower cost because we get bulk purchasing. And what prompted, I don't know if people have noticed, but what prompted the cleanup of the sign and everything out front, I don't know if people have noticed it or not.
Was
But
Mr. John.
yeah,
Salucci.
so they said, well, the programmer said to me, he says, do you actually have a sign like entering your community? And I'm like, yeah, we actually do. So I went down and took some photographs. I looked at it and I go, this is terrible. So I took it upon myself, if some of you noticed, and my own private time, because I work for a living, I'm not retired. So I took some time off and painted the sign with a special type of paint. I'm a licensed contractor in the state of Florida, so I know where to get the right commercial grade stuff. So I got some paint that's designed for the harsh UV environments and redid all that sign. And then that prompted and Jim and others to say, hey, let's clean it all up. Tony and his wife went, let's put some pots and flowers there. And I think it really cleaned up the sign.
He shamed us.
No, I didn't intentionally shoot. So anyway, that prompted then for nice photos to go on the website along with then all the other updates to the website. And the only other thing that's going to be brought, well, the website's a living entity, so we constantly update it. The next update will be hopefully by October 1st, the permit application, fill in your form document, like it'll be a PDF or whatever, that anybody looking for a driveway permit will do that. So that'll be more updated, but all the policy procedures, request for proposals, request for quotes, any vendors, if you know vendors that say they want to bid on things here, or even some of the local landowners here that have companies, you want to bid, you go to the website, you'll see the forms. So it's a much more interactive that now meets the audit. Because if we got a third ding from the audit, I don't know if people realize this, Tallahassee steps in. And they'll look at the district, say, what are you guys doing? You had 3 years in a row of audits, and you're not fulfilling your requirements under statute. So as far as I know, I think, Mr. Pringle, you can confirm this, but I think we've met all the audit issues during this year. So I don't believe we're gonna have any, if there's a new issue with the audit, it'll be something new that we're not aware of yet. So that's some of the goals that we as a board have taken to make sure that the entire district meets their obligations, so that I don't think you really want Tallahassee stepping in here, okay? We should be able to run this ourselves. So that's it.
Jennifer has something to say.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
before we leave that, it is the goal of any auditor to find something.
Yes.
They want to ding us.
That's what they get paid for.
That sounds like a lawyer answer.
She is sitting next to me, isn't she? Does rub off. But she is correct.
Good, Jennifer.
And you are, and to clarify, if there is an item on the audit, on the management letter of a change that has to be done in the audit report, and it is present for 2 years without being properly addressed, then it refers up to Tallahassee.
Correct.
So
But I think
we
we've
believe,
we've
yes, sir.
avoided that, correct?
You've addressed everything that the auditor has raised, remembering that this is a new auditor, and as Ms. Lawson says, the new auditor is going to review your books and works in a different way than the past auditor, and so new things will be presented. You've addressed all of those within the initial time frame, and I don't anticipate any problems or additional concerns going down the road.
From historical problems.
Yes,
That's what-
from things that may have been in existence prior. There has been, and Mr. Chairman, just as my addition to the report on the works that have been performed by the district, there has been a considerable amount of effort with regard to updating the website, with regard to creating the manual, and all the procedures that were there. And there was a considerable amount of work that was put into all of that effort. In addition, you created job descriptions for the secretary's position, for the treasurer's position, for the manager's position. You hired a manager, and Ms. Finazzo was very important in putting all of that into place. I don't want to steal her thunder, but there was a substantial amount of additional effort in addition to hiring an engineer and going through the first year of the audit with the new auditor, and surviving a hurricane and having all the emergency meetings and everything that went, and emergency purchases that had to be done as a result of Hurricane Ian coming through and tearing things up a little bit. So it has been a very busy year for the district, from my standpoint.
I've got over 200 hours in meetings, so I know how many meetings I've been to, which was required by FEMA which took about 4 hours per every Thursday, Friday, whatever days they called the meetings. For the first half of the year, we had the meetings every week. Then we spread them out a little bit more, but we're still working with FEMA and finishing the program, which still requires meetings to be held.
There you go.
And I have one person that's been very lost for the word, but instrumental was the word I was looking for. I would reassure you, without his help, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Peter.
And that's Peter.
That's what's good.
Peter, could you just stand up a moment? He's been working with the grants and with FEMA continuously, putting together pretty much everything for the water district, totally free of charge. And as I would say that, we've got a good selection of people here today. This board does invite anybody who wants to participate in any one project they might want to pick out as being part of it. This is your water district. It doesn't belong to us. We only represent you up here. So we would ask for your help if you would like to. It might be simply sitting down on a computer someplace, or it might be saying, hey, let's go out and clean up one road or something and get a little road group going. So it can be a vast majority of things. When we did the project up at the front, we had so many volunteers up there, we had to send some home. They swept the road, they cleaned the road, they edged the road, they mowed, they cleaned, they cut trees. And Tony, I have to hand it to him and his wife. They provided their labor, their services, their trucks. Gerald's Tree Service, also on the other side of the road, provided free of charge the trimming of the trees around that area. So we want to thank all of them for their help.
And I never get much to say because they all fill my words in.
I'm sorry.
Pringle already touched on it. Jim touched on it. But again, just a lot of time outside of our meetings that are every month that, some of you attend all of them, some of you don't. Some of you just come to the annual meeting just to understand the amount of time and hours outside of our once a month meeting. And I was going to also thank Peter, like Tony, his wife, Eamon, Tammy, everybody on this board that does everything, and people in the community that help out. It was a thank you.
Thank you very much. And I
Thanks, Jim.
didn't mean to steal your thunder.
That's okay. You and Pringle all the time.
Sorry.
I just sit here.
You gotta speak.
I agree.
You ready for the treasurer's report?
You want to participate now?
No, I just have a report.
Go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yes, you
Whoa.
can. All right. Stop. As part of the annual meeting, we have to provide an annual treasurer's report. A copy is in the back for everybody's pick up and carry out. That is in accordance with statute 298.17, and it says that we have to make a audit each year and then a report at the annual meeting and publish the statement within 30 days thereafter showing the amount of monies received, paid out during such year, and the amount of the treasury at the beginning and the end of the year. Now, we are having the annual meeting for the fiscal year end of 2023, but we have not been audited yet for 2023. That won't start until November, December, after this meeting. So what you see on this report is actually for the fiscal year of 2022 based on that audit. So for the audit report, the total revenue in fiscal year 2022 was $1,101,199. That included the CIP Phase 1 assessments that were received into the district, as well as the general maintenance acceptance. Can't hear?
You gotta talk right into the microphone.
Okay.
Once you turn your head away, it goes way down.
My son says the same thing. I talked to his back. The amount paid out for the fiscal year was $1,019,498. Again, that is includes the debt that we paid out for the CIP as well as the expenses. The beginning fund balance for the year, $956,018, and we ended the year at $1,037,679. That is for the fiscal year ending 9/22. So for 9/23, we began the year with that ending balance of $1,037,679, and our unaudited estimated ending funds balance for the fiscal year ending 9/30/2023 as of today, because I got checks in from Ron today and others, so that number will change, is roughly right now $1,058,825. And that completes this report. Are there any questions? The audit report is available on the website if you want to take it down for last year. And when we have the audit completed in March, April of next year, it will also be put up on the website.
Thank you very much, Chris. I guess we're moving on. Anybody have any other questions? Landowners have any questions or anything they may want to ask at this time? Okay, no questions being asked, and we're going to move on to the next part, which is disclose the landowners who have indicated an interest in being elected as supervisor. At this time I'm the only one that's been indicated that he wanted to run, but I think we need to turn it over to Mr. Pringle about now, don't we?
Yes, sir, I can help you understand, and especially the landowners, because you only do this annually once a year, and as a result, sometimes it's good to restate the process. As I indicated earlier, one of the requirements of this annual landowners meeting is to elect a supervisor to fill the seat that you currently hold, Mr. Chairman. And up to this time, as you've indicated, you are the only person who has made it known to the district that you're interested in serving as a supervisor to fill this seat. However, the process is an open nominations process that has been used by the district in the past to fill the seat, to elect a supervisor for the seat. Normally, the way that process works is for the any landowner being able to, at this time, make a nomination of any other qualified landowner to serve in the seat.
And or themselves.
that can include themselves. So anyone, any landowner who's qualified can nominate themselves for the seat. No second is required for the nomination. This is a nomination process. At a point in time where no more nominations are being made, it would be appropriate for the landowners, some member of the landowners, including the board members, your landowners as well, to make a motion to close the nominations. That would receive a second and a vote. And then once the nominations are closed, then we will go through the process of the election. That is the normal process. And so at this time, Mr. Chairman, the next step would be to open the floor to nominations from the landowners.
Okay, do we have anybody prepared, Chris, to take names, et cetera, so that we're,
Right?
Yes.
okay,
she
just
is.
checking to make sure we're not ahead of the game here. So at this time, we're going to accept nominations from the landowners. Any landowner can make a nomination for any, including themselves. So the floor is open for the nominations.
I make a nomination to nominate you.
Thank you.
I make a nomination to keep you where you are. Jim Bradford.
Thank you. Any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Chris Lawson.
I decline the nomination. I do not want to serve. But thank you.
Any other nominations?
Mr. Chairman, seeing no other nominations, a motion to close nominations would be appropriate. And when it receives a second, then a vote on that motion to close nominations will.
Motion to
conclude
close
this matter.
nominations.
I second the motion.
Aye.
So then, Mr. Chairman, if you'll call for the question of the landowners. This is a landowners meeting.
Okay, question's been called.
All in favor?
All in favor
of closing the
Closing
nominations?
the nominations.
Please signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
And is anyone opposed to the motion to close nominations? There's no opposition, Mr. Chairman, and so the nomination for the supervisor's position is closed. There's one nominee, that being you, and so you are elected or selected as a result of being the sole nominee.
Thank you very much. I guess I don't get to go fishing again this year.
That also means that we do not have to go through the election process, voter registration, or any of those other steps that are described in your annual landowners agenda related to the selection of the supervisor.
Is it inappropriate for me to do a happy dance?
You know, I just got one thing I'd like to say, because I know after the elections, a lot of you might start to leave. I would just like to remind you that this is your water board. And there are a lot of you out there that have more talents. I'm not gonna speak for John, but for me. And we could most certainly use your help in any aspect that you can find to help out. And, you know, if you ever have any questions, all three board members or supervisors' phone numbers are on the website. Call them and ask them. Don't sit back and wonder about what's going on when you can get the real answer. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Can we have your name, please, and you have to come to the podium. You've got plenty of time.
All right, my name is Maurice Tenniel. I'm relatively new to the community. And
Glad to have you.
Thank
Nice to meet you.
And my question is, where can one find out what are the various roles or positions that are on the board, what the qualifications are, such that, you know, I mean, at some point, you know, you need some people to volunteer for these roles. I've served on a community board before in my previous community, and I just would like to know, where does one find the information of, here are the roles, here is the job description, and here are the qualifications to apply for those roles.
And what does it get paid?
How much do you get paid? Okay,
$50.
You wanna be a supervisor, it's $50.
$50 a month.
So you don't want
Yeah.
the
It's
supervisor.
a volunteer role.
now, the answer to your question is, and I'm gonna put a little bit of a joke in with this, but, you know who's gonna get pointed out. Anyway, you already fit the qualifications. It's up to you after that. You are a landowner, that is your qualification to become a board member. I did get picked, I did get voted in a few years ago, and I have one person in the crowd today that asked me why I wanted to be on the board when I had no knowledge of what the water district was about. Well, she set me out to having to go find out, and I worked very hard at that. And I thank her for what she did, because she motivated me maybe to move forward with something I wouldn't have. I came on the board maybe a little bit for the wrong intentions. I came here because I was upset over a culvert pipe that was put in, or being put in, and I wasn't happy about the money that was being charged when I've always worked my whole life, and I know how to do stuff like that. All I needed was the instructions. So anyway, it turned out it was an election night. There weren't any people in the room, and I got appointed to the board with very few votes. She kept me on track. Thank you. Mrs. Smith.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So in further answering the question, and I believe we're moving around a little bit, but you are receiving public comment, and that's fine, and questions from the landowners. But the district, as a water control district in Florida, is governed by Chapter 298 of the Florida statutes. That's a great place to go look to see the parameters of the operations and the authority of the district. Chapter 298 would be a place to look. It also describes the powers of the supervisors, generally speaking, and the authority that the supervisors have with regard to overseeing and managing the works of the district. That's the primary function of the board, is to set the budget, create the policies of the district. Those were two separate items. I didn't pause in between. Set the budget, comma, establish the policies of the district, hire the personnel of the district, and then oversee the works of the district. And that's generally speaking the role of a supervisor. It is an elected official. To serve as a supervisor, you have to be a qualified elector in the district, a landowner in the district in good standing. Your assessments have to be paid and current. As you saw with the paperwork related to your ability to vote today, any landowner who is delinquent in their assessments is not authorized to vote. And so all of those are requirements to serve. So I've told you generally the scope of the job to be found in Chapter 298 and the qualifications. I think I've described to you. Was there anything else that you wanted to know?
Might want to mention the sunshine laws.
Yeah, sunshine, but I think one of your questions sort of alluded to, and maybe I misunderstood. Any of the positions here to help with the board, if you were interested, there are paid part-time positions in manager and secretary treasurer, and they get a modest salary, a lot more than $50 a month from the supervisors. And those are two positions that are designated in statute 298. By law, we have to have those positions along with a district, water district attorney and a district engineer or engineering firm. But like Peter, there's positions where you could volunteer based on your past work experience and skill sets, supporting the board in doing things that we need. Because this board, all of us are easily putting in hundreds of hours this year. People have no idea how many hours we put in. And we all, well, Jen's retired, but two of us work, Jennifer and I.
Excuse me, he works a lot. He's not retired. Not retired.
He's semi-retired.
He's got
He
you.
thinks he's retired.
But anyway, so if you're interested, you should talk to the board and talk to the people here Tell us what your skill sets are, what your experiences are, because you never know. Something you might be able to help us with. We're always looking for the help.
Mr.
But I
Chairman.
think what
Yes,
the
sir.
lady is asking, how much you guys make, the board members, not the secretary, not the finance.
$600 for the year,
$50 a month.
$50 a month.
No
If,
matter
if
how
the
many
landowners
meetings you
vote
go
for
to,
it.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the landowners have to vote for that. That's next on the agenda.
That's on the agenda. In a few minutes, you get to vote on that.
Less than $2 a day.
Oh, my.
Hey,
65 days a year, right?
Don't spend it all in one place.
I can't even get a Dunkin' Donut.
Half a gallon of gas.
Mr. Chairman, if I can
Yes,
make
sir.
just one more point of clarification for the gentleman. Annually, there is a landowners meeting once a year. That is the meeting where the position that's up for election, the supervisor's position that is up for election, is filled by election of the landowners. So the next available time to be elected to the board will be at the next annual landowners meeting. It's a once a year process.
September.
And yes, sir, and it is, the time of service is for 3 years. So you can do the math
did.
on the time period and also the pay received for the time period being about $50 a month. And that does have to be approved, and that is on the agenda for the landowners to approve. Mr. Chairman, also, now that you are elected to serve another 3 years, one of the next requirements is the supervisor's oath of office needs to be administered to you as being the elected supervisor. That's next on your agenda. If you want me to administer that oath, I'll be glad to
Go ahead.
do that. You want to stand and raise your right hand for me, please, sir? And then repeat after me. I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially
I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially
perform the duties
perform the duties
devolving upon me in my office
devolving upon me in my office
as a supervisor of
as the supervisor of
the San Carlos Estates Water Control District,
the San Carlos Estates Water Control District,
in which I have been elected,
of which I have been elected,
and I will not neglect
and I will not neglect
any of the duties imposed upon me
and I will not neglect any of the duties imposed upon me
by Florida law,
by Florida law,
including
including
Chapter 298 of the Florida statutes.
Chapter 298 of the Florida statutes.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes the election process for the annual landowners meeting. And you've also received the reports on the work performed by the district, which has been substantial this last year. So the next item on your agenda is the approval of the commission or the salary for the Board of Supervisors. There's a statute that deals with that, 298.14 of the Florida statutes, and it says that the landowners can approve up to $50 a day for the time actually engaged in work for the district and in attending sessions of the board for the supervisors. In the past, that has been further defined as $50 per month for service at the board meeting. So the other days of service, and there have been many this year, are not compensated days, and it is essentially the attendance at the regular monthly meetings that is the compensated event at $50 a day. So you would need a action by the landowners to approve the salary for the board.
How do we open that to the landowners? Just ask them?
Yeah, it's by motion, a second.
We're all landowners. So.
Yes, sir. It's by motion, a second, and a vote of the landowners as we have earlier performed.
So, it's for motion.
So a motion
Okay,
is
there's a
appropriate.
motion on the floor. Everybody's involved to come up with a number for the Board of Supervisors salary
It cannot exceed $50
per day.
Yes, per day for the time actually engaged in work for the district and in attending sessions of the board. That's right out of the statute, that language.
I have a question, I guess.
Peter DeBez, I have a question. Does the statute define what work is qualified? So obviously meetings fall under work by the board members that can be compensated, but is that the limit of the work that qualifies, or is there any broader definition?
Here's what the statute says.
Mr. Pringle, get closer to your microphone. You're in.
Sorry, I'm reading and moved away. Is that better?
Yes.
I apologize. Here it is. The members of the board shall be reimbursed for their travel expenses pursuant to section 112.061 of the Florida statutes, but shall receive no compensation for their service unless the landowners at the annual meeting determine to pay a compensation which in no event may exceed $50 per day for the time actually engaged in work for the district and in attending sessions of the board. That's the statutory language. There is not a better definition of that language, but generally speaking, in the past, the landowners have approved $50 pay to the supervisors for their attendance at the monthly board meeting.
Last year that was brought up, and
Yes.
there was a misinterpretation of what the supervisors were allowed to accept, and it was
That's correct.
disqualified and not continued forward for that reason.
Right, so it can be, and is defined as $50 per day for the time actually engaged in work for the district. So it could be more than just the attendance of the one session, if the landowners elect to approve that. It's up to the landowners to decide.
All right, can I make a comment without actually going up? I think it's just unfair for everybody to just ask us to do that. I think you guys should get paid what is fair. And I think we need a little bit more information on what other boards are
Do
getting.
you mind, I've asked everybody else to come to the, up to here, so with all due respect to the other people, I appreciate it, thank you.
So I'm sure this room is full of people that just don't understand what the norm is, okay? I think $50 a month for if you have spent this year working with FEMA and all this time, I think is absolutely ridiculous, okay? But I also know that we don't know what other boards are getting, what HOA boards are getting, anything like this, anybody that's a volunteer, situation. So how do you prepare us to make a decision or a vote on something when we have no background?
I believe the
vote
max
to
allowed is
to
50,
understand.
right?
Does that make sense?
Per day.
The max
Well,
allowed
maybe
is
there's
50
members
by the
within
statute,
this
so
room
it's
that sit on
irrelevant.
other boards or maybe understand or know, and maybe they can contribute to that.
I was gonna say, Mr. Pringle is the district attorney for other water boards and other groups. What's your experience? Are you familiar with the compensation, if at all, on other boards? Forget ours, just others, general.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You may.
The typical scenario is that board members attend the monthly board meeting, and that is their involvement. Generally speaking, that is their total involvement for the month. And so in most situations, the payment is for the attendance of the board meeting, and that's all that they do. In your case, you are very unique in that, from several aspects. This board, because you manage not only the canals and the water system, water control system, but also the road system in relation to the canal system and the water control system. You, in many respects, are more like a homeowners association board in the actions that you perform, in comparison to a standard rural agricultural based water control district where all they're concerned about is water flow, controlling the water, keeping the water for ag purposes, agricultural purposes, irrigation purposes, and then discharging water when there's too much. So you are in a unique situation. I would not define what you do as being normal, and in comparison to other water control districts I represent, they are paid generally for the appearance at the board meetings once a month, but that's about all that they do. So you are in a very different set of circumstances.
This board has taken on the role of participating in trying to get grant monies, outside funding, etc., to save the taxpayers of this community a lot of money. So the question really comes back that we spend the time doing that. Should we be compensated for for a portion of that time, which I know a lot of times by the time I get up, get in my truck, travel sometimes all the way into Lee County to a meeting and come back to, I've got my whole day shot. I leave at 8 o'clock in the morning, come back at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I have no more of my day really left. And I totaled up my time this past year, which actually, if I look back here on it, it's actually over 300 hours this year in doing that. Had we just got brushed by another hurricane, had we gotten hit by that one, we would be right back where we were last year all over again with the hours and stuff. Is there times when people will not spend as many hours doing what we do? Well, we're hoping that, and there's not one person here that got on here for the money. I didn't get on it for the money, and if our salary doesn't get raised today at all, then it'll stay the way it is, and I'm gonna do the same job I did last year. So, but the fuel cost and the compensation for just some of the time, lunch downtown Fort Myers, those kind of things would be nice to have. And I'm a landowner also, so.
You got that last year. You got per diem and travel last year.
I didn't use one dime of that last year.
You got it. We watched a vote on it.
We okay.
That was
Right.
You You are correct on that.
Let's tell the truth then.
Anyway, it's up for a vote of the landowners.
So everybody here appreciates the work that you guys do. A lot of your work, in my view, and I watch this closely, is actually outside the parameters of 298. A lot of it. If you just stayed within those parameters, which you, by law, you just took an oath, Mr. Bradford, to do that, you wouldn't be spending so much time. As for all your work, and you raised the topic, all your work to keep our taxes low, where are the low taxes? You have raised our taxes 70% over the last 3 years. That's, look up the numbers, look at your tax bill.
Is there any chance we have a graph we can put up here about this time? Just a moment, we'll put a graph of what the costs were this year.
You want me to pass it out?
You may. We're gonna pass out charts for everybody, so you will all have them.
Yeah, fine, no problem.
Here, Chris will pass them out in a second. There you go.
We'd have
while I'm passing that out, if you go back, when you go back home, look at your tax bill. My tax for St. Cloud Estate in 2020 was $401. It's going, what's it going to be for an acre and a quarter this year?
570,
For an acre and a quarter.
53.
For an acre and a quarter, up to acre.
That's it per acre.
I'm
The
sorry?
graph is all per acre.
The graph is
That's
per acre.
Okay. So the tax is over $600 for an acre and a quarter compared to the 400.
570.
It's all the same math.
That's 50%, that's not 70%.
It's 70%. I did the math. So anyway, so we need to.
We had a budget that we went over in depthly in several meetings over the past 4 to 5 months.
Right.
We went over those budgets. We had meetings of those budgets. We even had a forum where we did a, what did you call it?
Budget workshop.
Workshop to go over those budgets. We were proactive based on the past board's neglect to some of the items, in addition to the grants and things that Mr. Bradford and Peter have gone after. So you have to be proactive for the future. And if it had continued the way it was, you'd be paying more than that 50 to 70%. But it's based on that dollar figure from the prior year, not an overall 70% over the past.
The 70% is, if you go back, I don't know what happened back in 2010, but if you look at from 2018 to 2021, it was flat, which was $300 some. If you look at what it is now, it's close to $600.
So that's why you have to look at the top graph and see what happened when during those years that the assessments were flat. You see that the expenses were increasing. The expenses that were increased above the revenue numbers, reserves were being depleted as a result of that. So they really weren't charging a sufficient amount to cover the annual expenditures of the operations of the district during those years. I can come up with some reasons why I think they did that, which was to save tax dollars because of the CIP 1 and 2 charges. They were trying to mitigate those additional taxes that were being charged. But back in 2010, the assessment per acre was $696, just under $700 an acre. And then the boards took it down and took it down. At that time, our reserves were over $1.4 million. The whole goal at that time was to bring the reserves up to a level that should we have a catastrophic event within the district, that the district would be able to take care of and make the repairs needed to do that.
Why did you lead with that?
Pardon?
Why did you guys lead with that? If at some point a decision was made that, hey, we need to start augmenting our reserves, and we've made this decision to do that, tell people. I mean, tell people, hey, listen, we need to start increasing these numbers to get our reserves to, this is what we're aiming for, okay? And these are our expenses, this is what we're aiming for as reserves.
We did in all the meetings. These are in front of the landowners, and we all voted on it
Okay,
as
well,
landowners in the prior meetings and the workshops that we have. You were welcome to come to the workshops.
and what is the target for our reserves? What is a safe bet for us as a community to have a number where, hey, if something major were to happen, this is what we should be? Has anybody decided what that is?
The board has not decided what that is, but I will say that what the board is talking about is the future need for the road costs going forward. And at some point, how are they going to do that? So there's two ways to do that. You can either build your reserves and assign those funds to that project and continue to assess a little bit more, and so that you don't have another CIP assessment in the future, or you can continue and just charge what is needed once you reach that certain level of reserve that you feel comfortable with, and charge an assessment down the road. So, that's part of the board's decision in the future to do, what they want to do. Right now, we're just trying to bring the reserves back up. The auditors has said that we do have to assign reserves for emergency purposes and for short-term operating costs from the end of the year to the time at which we start to receive the revenues. So you'll see that the unassigned reserve number go down next year because we are taking out of that unassigned reserves and assigning monies for those two purposes.
But you
So
don't know what that amount is, you do not.
the
you don't know
new
the figures.
the new budget has not been determined yet. Earlier last year was set up at 90 and 80. It has been recommended that the emergency fund, because of Ian, go to 250, and then the other number would stay at 90 for the short-term operating costs. But that budget has not been finalized yet.
You can go listen to the budget meeting in the last 15 minutes, you'll see how they arrived at that 12%.
With all due respect, everybody, you know, we're asking that we can, so everybody in the room can hear the
I like to
conversation.
shout out, you know.
Well, I know, and a few people do, and other ones talk under their breath, and so we're trying to be respectful to everybody in the room. So if you need, I'll get up and carry you a mic.
So let me just add, so that was a very
12%.
good question. So I think your answer was appropriate from a concept standpoint. But at some point, we need math. And
Yeah.
your answer doesn't address math at all. So let me tell you, so I sent this, some of this,
If you want to know my math was throwing 350,000 in addition that the board quickly no.
well, no, I'm saying the math
Yeah,
being,
exactly.
you're saying there's a reserve, nobody said there's doesn't have to be a reserve, there's approximately $1 million in the bank. So this is all, like I've been in condos before, this is all about like your current self and your future self. So I don't want to build up $10 million reserve and then I leave the district and I leave that behind. We don't take that with us. So there has to be a balance, right? So you're basically described a process of long-term planning consists of we probably need some big amount of money in the future for unknown expenses, so let's raise taxes. And then we raise taxes to fund a one-time survey, for example, that has to be done in a regular interval. So you're not giving us, if you come and say, here's the lifetime of the roads, and this is what a good condo building would do. You take the engineering, you take the lifetime of all your assets, what has to be replaced, the timing, that's math. You come up with those numbers, and then you come to us and say, look, we need to do this, we need this money. And then we'll know. But we can't trust this process the way just coming up conceptually and, well, we're gonna raise the taxes.
It wasn't though. We had a workshop and we have budgets and we have accounting and we have history.
And if you stay for the next meeting, there will be more discussions on some of the topics you just touched on.
I was at the workshop, and I listened to the rest of the tape. I know it very well. That meeting, sorry again, it was basically an hour and a half of writing a letter to Santa Claus and then justifying at the end, grasping at straws to figure out how to justify it to us. And that's your.
And you didn't come to the second one. So, and that one got changed.
Mm-hmm.
The budget got changed at the second one.
Yes.
David, I'd like to clarify something for the record. The last time the district group of supervisors here, not us, dealt with anything that's required under statute 298, one of which is a major upgrade to the water management plan, was done in 2005. Since then, it's never really been addressed. So previous boards have been, quite frankly, derelict at their duties, and this current board, based on audit requirements and just common sense, says, hey, if we don't start taking care of stuff now in this district, everyone's going to start paying a lot more than we're paying in taxes now. So I'd like to ask you a question, David. What is your ultimate objective as a landowner in front of all the other landowners when you bring up what you believe are negativities or problems or things that we as a board are not doing based on your analysis? And that's fine, that's your opinion. But what's your ultimate goal? Because the ultimate goal here of this board is to try to take care of 800 some landowners. Because we're one of them. We're part of it. It costs us money too.
Right.
So what's your goal?
So where's-
What's your goal?
My goal is to keep our taxes lower. I don't think we need to be anywhere near at the level they're at. I think they could be dropped 30% at least, and you'd do fine. Our friend Tony, his expenses haven't gone up 70%, so he's still getting largely what he got 3-4 years ago. So the expenses, the legitimate expenses, are not going up. So all I want is to have a community, and I know this is painful, but you guys want this job, and it's our job to hold you to account. The water control plan, I actually brought up several times the last couple of years that there is no statutory water control plan. You guys all laughed at me and you ignored me. And now for some reason, I'm not sure why, you're addressing it. And that's good. But that's something that's the basic thing you do. If you read 298, 65 times the water control plan is mentioned. Everything you do is, the last sentence in the paragraph is, according to the water control plan. I don't know how you do any of this work without water control plan. So thank you for addressing that. Because we don't know what the vision is for this or anything. So my main goal is to have the taxes minimized, not to pay for things that we don't want, we don't need. And
But how you know you don't need? How do you know that?
we'll make the case and do the math. Give us the numbers.
If you look at the chart, the expenses for this past year and the revenue are pretty close to being right on target. And we did not do a lot of the work that what we should have done because of the time that was spent and the efforts by Jim, thinking that he would have the FEMA work started by now, and consequently that work is going to be double what it has been in the past to get the canals to where they need to be. But yet, even still, we have spent that money that was brought in. We're just shy of it. So we're not underspending by a great deal. We're honestly right on target. And so if we were to...
Is this information on the website?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I think you can save
Yes.
yourself a lot of aggravation in putting what is the cost of doing these roads improvements, these canals maintenance. I own 2 parcels of land in San Carlos Estates, and I own other property, so I understand that maintenance needs to be done. But will you place this on the website, and then maybe we can go for election about this subject in another 3 months or so? Because I think what he is trying to point out is that where is the money going? How is this assessment being calculated? Based on what? And show us where the money, also how is the money being held? Is it in a CD? Is it in a money market account? Because you guys are doing a great job. It's just a matter of communicating to everybody. Where's the money going?
It's
how
transparent.
Is it being calculated? I don't
On the
think it's
website.
not transparent. I think it's just a matter of communicating, putting it out there. You just got the website, correct?
No,
So then.
No, we've
so
had
then-
the website.
we've always had a website.
Exactly, because I know, I have seen it since 2019, but,
There is full transparency, and you are welcome to come to the meetings every month because there's a lot of history that you would be valuable information to you to the date today
I
and the
don't have
workshops.
it. I don't have it.
Okay.
What I'm saying is this information that he's requesting and the information about how is the money calculated in order to aim for a reserve. I understand that having $1 million, when a hurricane disaster happens, it's not a lot of money, believe me. But at the same time, people do not know. So if you put it out there on the website, look, for the road maintenance, we have calculated based on an engineering or a construction 3 budgets is based on this much. I think it's just a
We
matter
haven't gotten
of
there yet.
letting people know.
Do you mind if I add to that? Can anybody hear me? So, back to what you were saying, David, and I know you're backing on him, but the same principle. As we go on in the meeting, you're gonna see that we are starting to look at things that are gonna be needed to be maintained in this district. And when it comes to the manager's report, I will be reviewing some paving contracts, not contracts, assessments. And if you think $1 million is gonna go a long way, David, it's probably 3 streets in the district.
So tell us what.
All right, well, we're gonna
That's
get
right.
to that,
That's
so
right.
we will get to
And
that,
what
we
is
have
it
no
based
problem.
calculated on?
We-
And I see that you manage more than water management in the canals, which some of the canals need a good deep cleaning, for sure.
Yeah.
But you also are taking care of the roads, is that part of the
Correct.
298, is that true?
That
Okay,
was,
and that is in the website.
that was given to us by the community. That was not initially part of 298's structure.
I
That-
see.
We were the only governmental body, and so we were the ones that they tagged to manage and operate the roads that way. That wasn't something the board chose or the water district chose. We're the only governmental entity within the community. At the time, the city of Bonita Springs did not exist.
I see. I see. So then, all this information that we're learning here, that we are being asked to vote on, is that, don't you think it's better to have it on the website with budgets and then submit it for voting so people have an educated notion of?
It is on the website, it has been on the website since,
Now it's on the website.
it's been on there
Just
since
every
August.
meeting,
Every
Forecasting what we're talking about, all on the website.
And the forecasts are in the website?
Forecasts,
The forecast for the budget, saying, okay, we have got 3 different assessments or studies, and they say
we are
that-
not there yet.
Okay. There's the point. Okay,
May I?
thank you for hearing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could I have an opportunity to maybe respond to some
You
of
may.
that?
So in order for us to be able to decide how to vote and everything else, we need honesty. You guys all took an oath to honesty. An hour ago.
David, I'm gonna stop you right there, because I'm insulted, because you're implying that, at least for me, that we're lying or we're being devious on this board, and I find that
I'm
insulting.
glad you asked. Can I
Okay.
respond? An hour ago, I said regarding the permits that you made a motion to charge a $750 escrow. And I'm not necessarily in favor of the escrow. I'm just trying to follow along here from the peanut gallery. I have on my
David,
phone.
do you think the $750 escrow affects you personally? It's someone who's new applying for a new permit on the road. Has nothing to do with you, has nothing to do with the tax dollars. It's actually to help the tax dollars for all the landowners.
Okay, so you voted, I said that, and you said no. So you make everybody think I'm crazy and I'm making
I
stuff
think you
up.
are so confused. You are very confused.
Let me
Thank
read
you.
from your website, February 20th. John, that's you, made a motion to add a $750 escrow fee in addition to the use and connection fee at the time of application, which will be held till the conclusion of the project. Jennifer seconded the motion passed 3-0. So you told me that I was wrong. I'm just saying, if we don't have the correct information, I didn't use the word lie, you used the word lie. If we don't have the right information, how are we supposed to follow
You
along?
use not honest.
Yeah, you
are
said
saying
not
they are
honest. You
honest.
said that we're not honest.
Okay, so was this? were you
Again, I go back
honest?
to my
Were you
original
honest?
question, David. What is your purpose of bringing up all these issues?
To hold you accountable to your
We
oath.
are accountable.
You took
By
an oath.
law, we're accountable. Do you realize that? All of us have to file documents with Tallahassee, public disclosure of our financials, everything. We are definitely held accountable. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. You want to learn more? Join this board. Start getting involved. Stop being like a little negative person.
You are making a fool of yourself. You need to calm down. There's no need
Yeah,
for
calm
that.
down.
I apologize, but have you been in every one of these meetings?
This is
Have you
once
been to
in
every one of these
months,
meetings? He does this every time. He wastes everyone's time.
No,
Ma'am,
Absolutely. Come to every meeting.
you'll see this.
He's a sore at every meeting.
that's,
You need to
sir,
come.
You're out of line. It's just slanders. That's all.
Okay, as the chair,
Mr. Bradford,
I'm
you
calling
need to
this
do
to,
something.
I'm calling this to order, and this part's over.
Yeah.
Richard's gonna comment. I did
Richard,
Dean's
our
comment.
attorney, wants to make a comment, and sir, you'll be available after that. Please take the podium when it's your turn. If you want to stand there now, you're welcome. Mr. Pringle.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, the topic before the board relates to the salary of the Board of Supervisors. That's where all of this discussion started. If we can bring it back to that, that would be, I believe, appropriate. There will be other opportunities for public input later, but this particular topic relates to the salary of the Board of Supervisors. That's the point of discussion. I have responses to some of the items that were raised that I can make, but again, that's public comment, public input. Item number 19 on your agenda deals with that. We can discuss that then after action is taken on setting the salary of the Board of Supervisors.
Yes, sir. I know this got a little out of hand.
Yes.
Considering it is the landowners meeting, I was giving
and there is one
room
more
for
yes.
for the people to speak.
And there is one more public input opportunity after this matter is decided, Mr. Chairman.
So with all due respect, if you will hold your question for just a moment, let us finish with the vote on whether or not to change the amount of money that the board gets for their services. If in fact that doesn't, it can go either way. The floor is open for the vote.
For a motion.
For a motion.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
$50 per day, I think is very fair, but how many days are we talking about? Do we have a ceiling for the number of days? That has not been presented.
And who checks your time? And do you write out a time ticket and what you spent your time on so that we can see that and approve it? I mean, I would like to get paid too.
Again, I'm going to have to ask you to step up to the mic if you'd like to speak.
And you have.
Hello, yes. Again, Peter DeBaz, putting all the budgetary stuff aside, there's a whole separate line of discussion of, based on this cash flow statement, whether there's, funds that, how the funds are being spent. When it comes to the time of, I'm gonna make a motion.
Okay, we're talking about the money.
Yes, exactly, I'm trying to.
Okay,
That was known as a segue, everybody. But when it comes to the time of the supervisors, I have, over the last year, seen up close how it's being spent, especially when it comes to Mr. Bradford's time. And I can verify that the amount of time that was spent was far, well into the hundreds of hours for myself and for him and for the engineer on Mr. Enfield, which it wasn't even fully accounted for on his timesheets, I'm sure. In that regard, I think that a system that is more flexible is appropriate. I don't think, first of all, the hourly rate, even a $50, even 1 hour of work at a 50, given the work that is being done, I think that $50 would be appropriate. But I think I propose just having the board members submit a timesheet on a monthly or quarterly basis and being paid on their days. And I don't think that's I don't think it's undue a burden, because the work that they do is so clearly delineated. And I know that you have a list of your days. It's really not difficult at all, I think, to say, okay, here are the things that were done, and it can be voted on and be done. I think it's quite simple. So that's my motion, just to pay the board members according to the time, to their days spent. Because again, even $50 per day, given the quality of work that's being done and its importance, is not that high. Thank you.
Can I second that?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for your time.
Motion. You made a motion.
Was that a motion or a statement?
It was a motion.
Motion, and I seconded it.
It's been seconded. Motion carries.
Then you gotta have a vote. Do we have a vote?
Yes, sir. Because it's for the landowners, please call for those voting in favor by raising their hand, and anyone who's opposed.
I was just going to do that.
Yes.
I realized I had made that mistake. Anybody who's opposed?
Would you mind restating the motion for us so we can clearly understand?
Yes, formally, the motion would be to pay thank you.
My name is Peter DeBaz. I'm making a formal motion to pay the board members on a rolling basis based on recorded days spent working on district business. Thank you.
At At a rate of $50 a day?
At a rate of $50 a day.
Paper,
Excellent basis,
Timesheet.
yeah, paper timesheets or electronic timesheets submitted to the treasurer and approved.
And
$50 a day.
Visible on the website.
Yes, and those would be covered, of course, by existing. Yes, any other questions about the motion?
Time limit you're putting on this?
On a rolling basis, I'd say within, within
Only
60
for this
days.
Stuff or is this in perpetuity?
For the year?
Well, no, for all
I think
district
there was a
treasurers for
question.
for the next fiscal year. Yes, covering the next fiscal year.
Next year as well?
And Mr. Pringle would say that,
1 year, for 1 year time.
yes,
Every
this
year
is-
you need to reapprove.
exactly, every year at the landowners meeting, this would be addressed.
I just asked that because back when they were doing the road projects, they put the secretary treasurer on salary, which was only supposed to be till the road project was done. And I believe we're still paying secretary treasurers, so. I just want to find out. if there's a-
You always paid the secretary treasurer.
It's in the
a
statute.
sal- You always paid the secretary treasurer salary. Yes, you did, because back in 2000, I received a salary.
Again, this-
and
that
the
part-
prior-
Put up
that
the
part-
microphone if you're
this
going to
is-
talk, go back in the record.
This is not. part
No,
of the
that's a fair
discussion.
question, but that's not part of this motion because this motion only by law would cover this fiscal year.
And only the supervisors. At a rate of $50 per day,
Yes,
and they would provide an invoice to the district
yes, within 60 days, for example.
within 60 days of the end of the calendar month.
and that would specify what they've been working on, such as FEMA grants, what you're working on.
Yeah, of
We
course.
need to see that.
Of course.
Because
Absolutely.
we're chasing after things that we're not really sure.
I think it's fair to give it a try at least for 1 year, and then we will evaluate on the next meeting. I mean, their time is
That's
valuable.
fair, because every year you will evaluate that, that's what you come here for.
That's right.
So just, what I was going to propose was that I really feel like we need to have a written motion to fully understand what we're agreeing to. And then we come back and we have a vote of landowners on that written proposal. That way, it's not a matter of what I heard or what I think I remember versus what actually happens.
Is that a motion, sir?
Is that a motion?
There's already a motion on the floor,
We have discussion
and
before you vote.
we've been having a
We
discussion.
have discussion on his motion before you vote on his motion.
So I
That's
just
a
wanted,
different
Okay.
word, isn't it?
I just wanted to clarify that would be taking.
Your name, please?
My name is Chris Stoll.
Thank you.
That would be taking it from $600 a year to potentially $18,250 a year per person if they did work every day. And it hasn't been described at how much work per day.
Right.
Right? I know lawyers take a phone call 1 minute, they charge for 15 minutes.
Talking about you.
Okay, so I just want to make that clear that is what is being decided upon. I'm not saying that you're going to work every day, right? I'm just saying it's taking it from $600 a year to possibly over $18,000 a year. That's all.
Can you amend your motion to a dollar amount per month?
How many motions can be on the floor at once?
Sorry. He has to do his first.
Bingo.
We still only have one motion on the floor.
He can amend his motion if he wants to amend it.
Yeah.
I think we need to have the attorney bring in kind of a clear structure that we can learn upon, and then bring these motions on the next voting. That could be done online, I don't know how.
Would you like to address this, Mr. Pringle?
We have another person who wants to talk.
Ma'am?
Or
Okay,
in the next month's meeting, that's right.
excuse me, we have a person at this,
That's okay.
it's not,
You're gonna calm down, all right? Okay. All right. So on this chapter 298, it seems to me like we're working on a lot of projects that are well above the scope of this chapter. And understandably, we need grants and money from FEMA to get these projects underway and to save money for everybody here. So we're just kind of looking at maybe we should treat all of these hours, 300 hours, that's a lot of time. So maybe we should treat this as a subcontractor's position where, you know, you're going after FEMA grants, you know, and these monies that are available, it takes time to fill these applications out. This is a great deal of work, way beyond the scope of what, even you said that,
Pringle, isn't this about?
Mr. Pringle, that
The
this,
manager's job.
it is beyond the scope of the normal. And so maybe we should start looking at treating it as a subcontractor, and here are 5 grants that we should really look at and go in and then pay for those grants. We may never see a dime out of any of these. So we're gonna pay for something we may never get a return from. We may never see money from FEMA. We may never see any money from these grants. And that's the truth. That's right. And so you're paying for things that we may never see a return on. We may and we may not. Like you said, FEMA right now, the coffer is low, the money's going somewhere else. When they replenish this, and if they do, and when, we don't know where we'll ever see that money.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
would,
where we're at.
I would suggest to you that if we do nothing, we get nothing.
I
And
understand that,
maybe-
but you may
maybe-
not get anything, and this is my turn to talk. We may never see any of that money. We may never see it. We may and we may not. That's the gamble that you're willing to take. And if everybody else is willing to take, that's fine. But there are several people here that don't want to do that.
And what is your name, ma'am? You didn't give your name.
My name is Mary Kraska.
Thank you.
Yes.
You mean to say there's people in this room that don't want the FEMA money?
I would
The
suggest.
FEMA money may never become available. It depends. If there is a
No.
catastrophic storm, then that money goes directly to other people.
It-
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Kraska. I think those are some very good questions she's asking, and that's information since we're discussing about the landowners should have. So just to talk about grant money, well, there's 2 different kinds of money involved, right? There's disaster recovery money, which which given our discussions with FEMA are highly likely to be paid somewhere in the neighborhood of $150,000. Okay, one second. And then there's money also for the maintenance and improvement of our water system, which is called mitigation money, which we already have gone through 2 levels of our application has been passed through 2 of the county and now with the state, and we're talking about potentially approved by the county number of $2.5 million. So these are quite significant amounts. And they also directly pertain to the water management mandate of the district. But there's an interesting point about the costs that we've incurred to progress our applications to this point, and I think you'll be pleased to hear this. So when it comes to the administrative side of these projects, the government does have a system in place to compensate the governmental entities that apply for the resources that they spend on the administrative burden of putting these applications together. So for FEMA and for the HMGP, in my understanding and my discussions with these with the people involved on the government, federal and state side, the time spent by employees of the water district would be recoverable from the governmental from FEMA through as part of the application process. Similarly, a lot of the time that I've spent, I have donated, and not only that, but we're structured in a way that because it's that donated time is called in-kind work will actually accrue towards the budget of our cost share of those mitigation projects. So instead of paying that, normally you would have to pay a consultant or an employee to do that work. We'd be talking about about tens of thousands of dollars that are actually going into the budget to offset that work. So from a cost standpoint, I think that that stuff is one part of the mandate of 298, and 2, we've done it. I don't think anyone can do it cheaper than we're doing it. We're doing it really, really cheap, and the government picks up a lot of the bill. But those are great questions, and I'm glad we were able to talk about it.
I still think that we should keep track of the time that we're spending on these grants so that we can get reimbursed. Those times have to be accrued. And let's just see, in a year, we can see what we've spent and what we've recovered in grant money and reassess at that time.
And I have a question. That information that you just gave us.
Could you
your
come
name
up,
is
can you
Peter?
come up to the mic, please?
Yes, sure.
Thank
That
you.
information, my name, by the way, is Marive King Newman. And, your name is Peter?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, nice to meet you. And thank you for what you're doing. Would it be great that, all that information that you just gave us verbally, that I'm not going to remember 10 minutes from now, would it be in the website? Because I think people will vote gladly for you to get compensated upon results. It's not a bad deal. We're getting 2.5 million or 2.4 million, right? So that's all I have to say. Communication, please.
When will the property owners be able to see all these FEMA projects? You're gonna put it on the website so we can see what you're doing?
Isn't it already on?
No.
Yeah.
I guess we can place it on there. We've talked about it at every meeting. I personally didn't go look, so I just asked John about it just then. We'll place them on the website.
You're committing this whole community to FEMA, a federal agency.
That's
And we
gonna
need
be
to see
more
what you're
hours.
committing. Excuse me.
Yeah.
We need to see what you're doing. And it's
Okay, again, I'm gonna have to ask you to come back to the mic.
Microphone.
My name is Susana Creve. That's gonna take more hours from the boards to be on the website, placing the information, and they still making $50 a month. This is what they make.
Yes, but it needs to be informed. It doesn't matter. If it costs, that's right. If it costs $5,000 more a year for them to enter the information on the website and keep the democracy going, it's a good idea.
I
It's money well
completely
spent.
agree with you. I think
Yeah.
communication is key. I think everybody needs to be informed. And sometimes, in my understanding, I'm a foreigner in this country, okay? Then I have some issues sometimes understanding the language. And I think sometimes that needs to be brought out in a simple language. Then everybody can understand. Not like attorney's language. Okay.
Richard,
I think sometimes it's
Second shot in the last 2 minutes.
but maybe other people feel the same way as me. But we are trying to vote here in how much they are gonna make. If people think $50 a month is fair and is enough, they are putting a lot of hours from their lives because they are landowners, we are landowners, okay? And we don't wanna pay more taxes, we don't wanna pay more fees, but there is certain things that needs to be done, and they cost money. And then the board is trying to do that because they benefit from that as landowners. They're not trying to make money. I think there is certain concept here, people are trying to make money. No, we are trying to save money and save aggravation if we have another storm coming here and the canals are all clogged and full of debris and trees and not clean. We are gonna be in a flood zone. We are gonna have problems, correct?
This is here. Talk to this man right
But
here.
that's not the subject here. We're talking $50 per day that they have invested. The $50 a month is granted, is given.
I know.
So let me lack your confusion.
No,
If
I'm
the
not
attorney, if
confused.
Mr. Pringle.
I didn't finish my thoughts. What I'm saying, Peter made a motion here, and then we are discussing that motion about the payment. If you guys think it's not fair, the motion that Peter said, paying for by the hour or like $50 a day, but depending how many hours they are working, they can get the $50 a day or not. Or if you guys think it's not fair, I'll put a motion. What about $200 a month? A flat fee, $200 a month instead of $50 a month.
Mr. Chair.
People are afraid of spending money. I understand, I agree. But Yeah, I agree, hourly, it's not, we are not talking about hourly.
Oh, just a monthly fee.
Yeah, it's a monthly fee.
I know.
That is my motion. What about $200 a month for the next year and see what happens?
Yeah, that's.
Meanwhile,
Mr. Pringle.
Excuse me.
they're gonna keep their hours, how much hours? The board will commit to keep the hours that they have been working. And they will present how many hours are they working, placing information on the website, doing things.
So reiterate very simply your motion, because it might be a good one.
Excuse me, we can't have more than one motion on the floor at a time. Let me have the floor back for a minute. The board members don't want a dime more. We want to end this.
Yeah.
You guys, if you think that's fair, we don't want 10 cents more from the ones who don't think it's fair. We've been doing this for years at the rate that we're supposed to do it. We took this job because we wanted to do the right thing. And through this, we've been accused of many things. We don't want your $50. Thank you.
I withdraw
I'll put a
the
motion on the floor to, the motion's been withdrawn.
Yes, sir.
So
Mr. Chairman, I believe you're about to hear that the motion maker is withdrawing the motion. And so then the floor will be open for additional motions to be made.
I withdraw the motion and I submit a new motion to compensate them at the rate of $50 per month in accordance with their attendance at the monthly meeting. Thank you.
I second that motion.
There's a motion and a second been made
There's a motion and a second.
in the back of the room, right? You made the motion.
Tammy.
We didn't finish it off.
Tammy.
So,
Okay, motion.
I thought we were gonna vote on that motion.
so you have a motion and a second. The other motion has been withdrawn. The current motion is to pay the supervisors $50 a month for attendance at the regular monthly meetings. That's the motion that has been seconded.
That's
So you can
correct.
receive discussion about that motion and then call the question on that motion and see what the vote is.
Okay. Discussion on the $50 a month for the supervisors. That is the motion on the floor.
We make it $50 per meeting that you guys have, because you have emergency meetings, like the other ones, you have 2 meetings, why shouldn't you get $50 for that? The motion.
It's not the motion.
No, sir.
we do get the extra
Right,
$50.
okay.
If they have a meeting, a special meeting, they do get the extra $50.
Need to vote on it.
We need it.
That's fine. Just-
We have discussion on the floor. Any further discussion? What, you gentlemen standing behind the mic, do you have any discussion or?
Not on this motion.
Okay. Vote on the motion.
All in favor, please raise.
In favor.
Yes, all in favor.
Motion carries.
Call for those opposed, just
Those
so we can
opposed to
see
the
a show of
motion?
hands, please.
Those opposed to the motion?
No, one hand is shown. So, Mr. Chairman, that matter is closed. The next item on the agenda is other public input.
I think that needs to come from me. Is there any other public input?
About any specific topic?
Any topics?
Any topic you would like?
So again, my name is Maurice Tinsman. I'm not sure I clearly stated what I wanted to earlier, so I'm just gonna state it again. It's a comment. I think it's entirely reasonable for the board members to get compensated for this extra work under these unusual circumstances, especially with disasters and what have you. I just felt like it's something that we need to have a motion that's documented in a way that can be passed out. Everybody clearly understand what they're voting on. And I think that's the way to do it, but I think it's entirely reasonable that you get compensated. You're doing an extra effort that benefits us all.
Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
Maurice, can I make
Exactly.
a comment? Before,
Hang on.
Maurice, can I comment to that? The motion is based on the landowners. We are not, the board members and the attorney is not providing a written motion for the landowners to consider. The landowners are arriving at the motion that they are making in relation to the compensation in accordance with the statute. If you would like a written dialogue of the statute so that you can read that before you make the motion, then we could have that available. But the motion itself is being created by the landowners, and so it's not something that can be preemptively written and drafted for
Well,
a
chapter
consideration.
298's online and anybody can read it.
Right?
So, Mr. Chairman, I think really, in answer to your question, there is one annual landowners meeting. These do not occur regularly, and so the expectation is that the landowners as a body will make these decisions at the annual landowners meeting. The next time the annual landowners meeting will be, the next time the landowners will get together as a body is a year from now. And so that's why there's not a written document, a proposal that is being presented, because it is coming from you and you're only together once a year.
So that's exactly what I'm suggesting. Any of us that's going to bring a motion to this meeting where we expect the rest of our co-landowners
Sure.
to vote on it, we need to bring a written copy of what that motion is. So when it's presented here, it can be passed out to people and they can decide based on
Yes, sir.
what's
Again,
in
the
writing.
narrative
And would be,
There's an issue with that though, and if you're gonna ask somebody to vote on things, there should be some kind of background and information about what we have, what options we have.
Yeah.
And coming into a
So, Mr.
meeting at 10
Chairman.
o'clock and then asking to vote on something. And I, for one, think that, like I said earlier, I think if you guys spend that much time looking out for us as a land, I think you should compensate for that. But then again, what is that? Okay? What is it? And we just want some information on it. So, and I think, at this point, and I think as far as.
Still need you to step to the mic.
Oh, I'm loud enough, aren't I?
Yes,
There you go. How are you, baby? She is one of the best people that I've known, actually. So just so you know, this is a very successful businesswoman. We've been doing business together for a number of years, and she's great for the community. Anyway, I think with the addition to a new and revised website, I think preparing us to come and make votes and stuff like that, I think maybe some proactive steps should be taken to specifically add information to the website so that we know.
Somebody has to put that information in.
Exactly. And I would be 100% willing to add a budget item just for that. Even for, just for that.
There's
I
eight.
think-
Eight items listed under the annual landowners meeting that are on the website and have been on the website with the exception of 2 items that got put on late last night because they were late submittals.
Oh,
So
just-
if you have something that you want to be added to the landowners meeting for next year, then I would suggest that you present it to the secretary, treasurer, or the manager. Actually, the manager, because she's the webmaster, to be included on the website for the any inclusions.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, and who is the manager?
Audrey.
Audrey, all right, nice to meet you, Audrey.
So,
And-
what would you need to make your life easier and to get quicker access and more information on the website?
You're volunteering.
Just kidding. If that's what it is, just ask. I'm not an IT guy, but we have, how many
You just hit our hearts right there. That's what we've been asking for. Thank you. And if you'll just, you can work that out with Audrey anytime you want. She can, unlike the board members that can't make it.
Well, again, it's.
I think I can clarify your question.
What I'm saying is that you have just asked for more money because you spend all these hours working on FEMA stuff, and I would give you every penny that you want.
Right.
But we don't even know what you're working on because it's not on the website yet, and it should be put on. So if you need something from us to make sure that that website is 100% accurate and everything is loaded up there, just ask. How do we do it? Do we hire somebody?
My recommendation is for most people, if you want to know what's going on in the community, that you come to every meeting at 6 p.m. on Monday, third Monday of the meeting. Then you're going to hear what's going on. You're going to know.
But that is very hard for some people that are constantly traveling back
But
and
it's
forth.
on the website too, and the
But
recordings.
if it is on the website,
And
It
it
is.
you
is.
can read it anytime in our.
The recordings are on the website.
recordings,
Every
yeah.
recording is on the website.
I
Every
understand
recording.
that, but the information is not,
Yes, it is.
right? Because you said you've been working on FEMA projects,
Yeah.
we'd all love to read that, and it's not there. So again, I ask, whatever you need,
Right.
Confidentiality of FEMA, like
FEMA, let me just interject.
the money's released.
FEMA process,
They may not be allowed.
grant, I don't speak for Mr. Sheldon. These are applications and forms that are submitted electronically up to federal agencies. I mean, there's not like a library or indexed volume that you could put on as a PDF. I think maybe we could put the application.
I think we're looking at more what the young lady over there said,
Well,
something
I'm
that was
saying
more,
what
2
you-
paragraphs, and this is what's going on. And
That's
again,
right.
you would ask us again next year.
Spot on, Alan.
You
to
do
say,
that in
hey,
your report.
This
We
is
do
what we
that in our
spent, I
reports.
give
That's
you every
what I'm
penny
saying.
for every you ask.
Well, real quick,
Very
we do it
deep,
in our reports though, and they're all posted, and all the meeting subjects criteria is in here. So when people are saying that it's not posted, they don't have the
Peter,
information,
go
or
ahead.
can't make the meetings, it's on the website.
I know, but again, it would have been nice to know, just the first question I asked, hey, what's the norm?
That's right.
What's the norm for communities? And I understand
It's
we're
posted.
different. Is
We had the
norm
audit.
$50 a month?
Is the what?
When you guys asked for us to raise the thing, okay?
First of all, you
again,
didn't ask.
We didn't
it's
ask.
$50 a month.
We didn't
It came
ask.
up as an item agenda.
We didn't ask.
You know, we didn't really ask. Maybe I did. Maybe I insinuated that. I don't know. But we're beyond that now. It doesn't
I
matter anymore.
understand that. I
And
understand that.
personally, this is my community, my subdivision, and I'm not asking for 10 cents to do what I do. I volunteered last year after the hurricane that hit us on September 28th. I've stayed with it every since to make sure
Is that right?
that
Jim,
we
I'm
could
not
do
questioning
every.
your dedication.
I'm not saying you are. I'm just simply saying that there's not one person that's ever in the history of this board set up here for the money. Nobody. And they've all worked very hard. And I don't care which one it was and how many years ago it was, every board member volunteered their time and efforts and put a lot of effort in the community to the best of their abilities to do this job. And I'm gonna do the best I can, as long as you guys elect me to be up here. This is the last term though. And, but, no, you know, we went through this hurricane. We just scathed another one, and the 28th of September is not even passed yet. So the one that went up the coast, we were really close to getting that one. And that other one brewed up within, 5 days out there, and it became the most catastrophic hurricane of Southwest Florida in the history down here. So I'm not
questioning it, Jim.
and I understand that. But see, we don't always know what's going to occur next in our lives. And the most of us in life, including you, we jump on board, do the best we can. It may not be correct, it may not be right. We do the best we know how for that period of time. And I can tell you that this board has given its heart and soul, managed your monies and everything else the best that it could. We don't really care. I don't care. That little trivial amount of money that would be contributed, I don't need it. I mean, it'd be nice to have had the compensation and make me equal to what I've spent. It doesn't really matter to me because I never even turned in a timesheet for the mileage and the fuel for my truck in this past year because I didn't really care.
And I think that what you just did there is wrong.
That's right.
What, not
I think
turning
you
it
should
in?
have been compensated for anything you did.
That's
That's what I
right.
want. All I want to know is if we're going to come to a place and vote on something, give us some information.
That's
Say,
right.
hey, listen,
No, I will begin my comments by admitting blame there, that if I was gonna submit a motion of that gravity, I should prepare for it, and that's a lesson learned. So thank you.
okay, it's time for you to go then.
It is time for me to go, actually. In summing up, I'm gonna say the following. One, I think Mr. Bradford's letter that came in the mail was very good in wrapping up some of the things that were worked on, and potentially more frequent updates of that blog narratorial type would be welcome. Obviously, the minutes are online, the agendas are online. Those are really boring. So a bit more narrative could be a good thing.
There you go.
In that vein, I encourage you, spending a lot of time on a volunteer basis this past year has been rewarding because it's for the benefit of the place where we live, and that's extremely important. So I would encourage you, if you see a need within the district, please don't rush, don't hesitate to engage and try to fill it yourself, because more than outsourcing, and I think that's how you get the best quality work. And the final thing on that end is that we would like to, I guess I'll say, resurrect the Halloween golf cart parade from last year. And if you guys would like to do it with us this coming October, I think the 28th is the Saturday. We would like to do a dusk Halloween golf cart parade again. So please, if you have the golf carts, or if you don't, come. We'd like to start in front of our house actually, and just get to know all of you on Papillon. So I'll put it on next door, and please mark your calendars for Saturday the 28th. That's the last thing I wanted to convey. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Peter. We have one more speaker, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, my name is Chris Stoll. If this is your own forum, let me know. It says in last month's meetings that John asked whether it would be power when street lights were installed. He said it would be nice to have external receptacles installed at the same time. I wondered if that would be
Have what done?
So
external
I can answer that.
receptacles installed on the power or on the lights.
So just so you know, I've been in touch with FPL, and tentatively they were gonna come up on the 21st of August. Well, that never happened, and when I called FPL to inquire why I never received a phone call the day ahead, and what had happened, the young lady had let me know that they had moved the date until September 15th. Well, guess what? We're on FPL's time. The requests for these things have been in. They have not come to fruition twice with 2 set dates. So I'm still waiting to hear from FPL, but the request has been in, and we just haven't heard as of yet. You'll see a lot of the Pike, which does some construction with them. They work, I guess they're subcontractors for FPL. You've seen them in the district, but they've been restructuring their telephone poles. I guess that's precedent for them, probably because of the hurricane season that's not over yet. And then I'm sure after this all comes, the weather gets a little better, they'll probably give us a little more of they'll have more time to get to us.
My question is why do we need external receptacles on the power poles? Who's going to be using, what are those going to be used for?
I
I'm
think,
worried about abuse of those
well,
potentially.
I guess every time we turn around, we can put caps and locks on them with a padlock to make sure that the abuse doesn't occur. The objective of having the outlets there were simply that if we needed to use a pump or use a tool or use this or use that near them, then we had the ability to do it. It wasn't something that we die for one way or the other. It's just simply that sometimes you go down to these areas to work, you've got an extension cord to drill. A lot of people have battery operated stuff today. The times are changing. It was just to make sure that while we were doing it, we didn't have to pay an electrician to come back and do it later on if we needed it.
Okay. All right, that's fair. My second question had to do with after the hurricane, there was a sign that was put up at the entrance of Strike that said, or on Dietz on the stop sign, and that said, gate working. It was a pretty fancy sign, all metal, reflective and all that.
Correct.
Why did it have to be so fancy when we're only going to use it for a short period of time?
Sometimes things just happen the way they happen. It's not that it was an intended thing, but the bottom line is, I'm ultimately responsible for that, so I'll take your hit on it.
Okay.
But sometimes they happen, and when you ask for a sign to be made, and sometimes it gets made in a different quality than you expected, or maybe that was understanding from the verbal communication.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure. I saw the sign, I'm like, it's only going to be up for maybe a month to say that the gate is not working. Now it's gone. So I was just wondering about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
What do we get for the old gates?
Pardon?
What do we get for those old gates?
We auctioned them off and nobody bought them. Would you like to buy them?
How much?
I don't know. The board could put it, the board would have to vote on that at a board meeting later.
They've been already destroyed.
But we had put them out there. I think the minimum bid on them was $100 if you would like to have them.
These are the gates that were at Stillwell?
The ones that were at Stillwell. One of them functioned, one of them didn't. We have stripped some parts off them since then.
So the arms and the solar thing is working?
Nope. We have, like I said, we have taken some parts since then,
Okay.
okay? So, if anybody's interested then in them, I think the board can vote on that just as soon as we get to the board meeting itself.
Hi,
Questions?
I got here late. I don't know if you discussed this or anything, but I wanted to talk about the assessment.
If
Your
you-
name, please?
Pardon me?
Your name?
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, if I could help you out just a little bit to shut down on the time. If you'd like to discuss your assessment, Chris Lawson, our Secretary Treasurer, could explain the whole thing to you, and I think she could come up to a conclusion. That's been discussed already today.
Oh, it has been? Well, that's, I'm
We're
sorry.
more than happy to help you out, and if you want to do it at the public meeting, feel free to do so.
Okay, so we have already tabled that? Is that what
No,
you're
ma'am,
saying?
it's not tabled.
She can talk about it.
She can talk about it.
Go right ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to get a clear view of this. I'm very confused. First of all, where was the money to pay off phase 2? Where'd you get that money?
In July of 2021, they used they used some of the reserve funds to pay off the loan.
All right, and then what's left in those reserve funds now?
Today, about 900,000.
Why can't we, instead of charging us, why can't we just take the funds from there to pay this off? I
Because
don't understand why this wasn't thought about and why you didn't get more information on this as to why this is not gonna count.
Who's the chairman in the absence of the chairman?
Me.
Vice chairman?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Madam Vice Chair, may I respond?
Yes.
There are 3 assessments in the district. One assessment is the maintenance assessment. The maintenance assessment is the one that has the most flexibility in terms of the amount of the annual assessment that is approved by the board. The maintenance assessment also includes in it the reserves of the district. That's a part of the maintenance assessment. There are 2 other assessments that are also charged in the district. One of those assessments was the phase 1 assessment. That assessment amount was set by the court, by a judge, when the judge approved the bond validation final judgment. So that assessment for phase 1 was set by the final judgment. It was a set amount.
Phase 1, the bond, was that the $1 million that we took out to do the roads?
No.
It was more than $1 million,
All right, but that's
but
what that was for, right?
for the roads,
Yeah,
is that phase 1 or phase 2?
Was to maintain the roads.
In
Right.
phase 1, no, ma'am. In phase 1, they were both for infrastructure improvements that were addressed in the water control plan and that the water control plan said needed to be built for the benefit of the district as a whole.
Okay.
So there were 2 of those. And they were both approved by the judge in the form of a bond validation final judgment. In the petition that was filed by the district to get the bond validation final judgment, there were statements made about benefits, there were statements made about costs, there were statements made about the actual construction element. All of that was in the petition that was filed to the court. The court ultimately said, we approve the benefit to the particular parcel owners. We approve the assessment amount to be charged to each of the parcel owners. And we say that the assessments are valid liens against each of the parcels in the amount stated in the final judgment. So that was all laid out for the phase 1 bond and the construction work, and also for the phase 2 bond and construction work. They are separate, however, from the maintenance assessment where the reserves are found in the budget. What happened was a couple of years ago, the board decided to pay off the phase 2 assessment loan out of the reserve account that was part of the maintenance budget. And they did, and they pulled the money out and they paid it off.
But did they realize what was gonna come back at them?
They, I'm sure, did not.
Oh, okay, so
And
they didn't really check it out thoroughly before they decided on
I'm
this.
sure they did not understand fully the full ramifications. But here's the other part. The assessment, the phase 2 assessment was as described by that bond validation final judgment, and it still has time left on it. The assessment is still an assessment. What the board, and I described all of this in one of the regular monthly board meetings, what happened at the time was the secretary treasurer sent a letter to the Department of Revenue and said, we've paid off the phase 2 bond, the loan is paid off, but the assessment was still in effect. It was still in effect. And the letter was sent to the Department of Revenue that said, we paid off the bond, the loan, we don't need to collect the assessment through the tax collector anymore. What happened was the form of the collection of the phase 2 assessment being collected through the tax collector was terminated by the Department of Revenue. The assessment is still there, is still in existence until the term clicks off and everybody pays the last payments due under that assessment, because it was set by the judge in the final judgment on the bond validation initially.
I have another question. When is phase 1 and phase 2? When are those loans paid off? I thought when we did, I've been here for 28 years now on Rotus. I talk to you all the time, Chris. When I thought the 20 years were up. And I'm waiting for my tax bill to jump down, because that's what builds it up, is because we're paying off these loans.
Right.
When does that happen?
Phase 1 comes off soon.
Phase 1 will be, this year's tax bill will have the final phase 1 assessment charged.
Okay,
And it will be less than what you paid last year.
great. All right, and then how about phase 2?
Phase 2 is based on those billings. So depending on what you decide to do, whether you pay it off in full this year or you choose the installment of paying half of it this year and half of it next year, is totally up to you.
So my taxes should drop about how much?
For this year or for next year?
Well, for this year.
Well, for this year, you're at 1 1/4 acre, correct? So I think, don't hold me to it, but I believe your assessment's going to be about 436 and change, 436.63, 436.36, something like that.
I gave every year.
No, you had been paying 725.71 for your phase 1.
Well, then why is it going to be less?
Because we had been paying it down early and paying additional principal pay downs, so that the final payment will actually be this year, not next year when the loan matures. Because the loan matures in August of 25, and we will be able to pay it off in 24.
Okay. And, Mr. Bradford,
Yes, ma'am.
when are you gonna take that little tiny pipe out of my gutter, my ditch, so I get drainage there and not backing up? When are you gonna do that?
Mr. Edenfield, I am not gonna put that off there. But
I would personally say I'm not familiar with the pipes that Mr. Bradford put in.
Really?
What he has
he's
is
saying that I put there. No. You're,
24310 Rotus.
I think it's the one that causes it to go this way.
Does anybody else have a little drain?
Yeah.
they do.
Every road does.
And
Everybody
it
does.
backs up right up to my
Is this one of those
right.
We were looking at those.
I know, he told me that. He
I
told
know.
me that they were
Every
removing them.
ditch has one, and there are some that cause flooding in the yard.
Right.
And Mrs. Smith has one, and she's not here right now, but we've been talking about this, trying to get this ratified so that we also have to do it during a program where we've got the funding to do that. We can't afford just to run out and hire tractors to do it.
They're there by permit.
Yes.
They're there for a regulatory purpose.
Yes,
Water
they
Management
are.
District
Well, it was a
requires-
big mistake, let me tell you,
They-
big mistake.
Well, and Mr.
Water
Chairman.
does not run uphill.
Very rare.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Thank you. Amazed how many people think it does.
Mr. Chairman.
We are looking at those and looking to see if we can.
Yes. Yes, and just to clarify, those were required by the water control plan and the permitting of the district. So in order to change them, the water control plan has to be amended. And that's part of the work that has been described for the engineer to do this coming year, is to gather the information necessary to see what amendments to the water control plan need to be made. And then it'll become a board question on amending the water control plan.
And the engineer and I have been discussing that, so. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Lisa Tombino. The whole subject that she was just talking about is where the letter was very ambiguous, so I lack of clarity here, so that's what I'm trying to get, is clarification. I've been in this neighborhood for a long time. First, Jim, sorry about the other night. I had a massive headache. Mom was giving me a hissy fit. The dog was barking, and I was finishing work in a meeting that I had to get on. So
That's okay.
didn't mean to just blow you off, but it was just a wrong time. I know, Jim and Tammy are regular neighbors I've been here 23 years. My husband built the house back in the 90s. We all had the dirt roads. We put a lot of money into this and paying a lot of taxes. So that's kind of why I'm very concerned with the way that letter stated, is that certain properties. So my question is, if I've been paying into this for all these years, we have 3 lots, how am I still paying something? I never got the culvert on one of mine that was supposed to go in. It was someone that took dirt that wasn't supposed to be taken off our street, put it near theirs. There were things that went on before, any of the new folks moving in. We have a very different thing happening now with a lot of new people moving in. My concern is, do we have transparency as to, if I'm paying this fee on my properties, let's just hypothetically say someone here owns 10 lots. How do we know if they're paying it on theirs? And how is this being shown so that we can see who's paying and who's not, and what it's actually going for? It was a little confusing to me.
Number one, I am going to turn it over to Chris and the attorney for that answer, but I can reassure you that the transparency is there down to the letter.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for, is to just have
So-
a greater understanding.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. The letter referred to certain properties, and the reason for that statement is some Phase 2 property owners have paid off in full and already, and so they are not having to pay any additional sums because they've already paid off. So that was the reason for that reference to certain properties. The properties, any property that still owed a Phase 2 assessment, received the letter and had the coupon on the bottom of the letter with the amount that they needed to pay to finish out the Phase 2 assessment on their parcel as established by the bond validation final judgment. So all of those financial records are records of the district that have been maintained continuously since the Phase 2 assessment was put into place way back. And those records are all part of the records of the district. Ms. Lawson, when the letter was prepared, Ms. Lawson added that payment coupon to the bottom of the letter based upon the record of the district and the payment history on the Phase 2 assessment on a parcel by parcel basis.
So is there record of everyone that has paid and hasn't paid and all of that can be reviewed somehow?
Those are all records of the district, yes ma'am.
Okay, where would those be found?
You can talk to Ms. Lawson about those in particular, yes.
We had in 2021, there were no payoffs made on either CIP Phase 1 or Phase 2. So we used the payoff record that had been created for that year because they had been reconciling the statements and the weighted acres for the amounts that were still outstanding. And so that report was used to create the spreadsheet for those landowners that still owed funds, because you had it on your 2020 tax bill, you didn't have it on your 2021 tax bill. So if you didn't have it on your 2020 tax bill, that means you would have had to paid it off in 2020.
Okay, I don't know, I have to go back.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to see how I can see all that. I just wanna make sure, because there were obviously some balls dropped and some changes made and just huge growth and rapid influx of people coming in here. So if I've been here all these years and I've been paying, not a small amount, it's not the least expensive tax place around, that's for sure. But we love where we live, so we're, happy to do that. We were happy to have better water flow and all the things that have been done. I just would like to be able to say, well, why am I paying this for these and these certain property things? It's still, even though you're trying to explain it, it's still a little ambiguous to me. So I'd like to be able to see if there's a breakdown where I can view that, if that's what I'm trying to ask.
Is it okay if she sits down with you on a one-on-one at some point in time so you can explain it to her? You're more than welcome to meet with Chris, one-on-one, sit down with her, and she can go over anything you want to know.
So you'll have every single property in the entire development that's paid and a documentation?
I have the payoff record that was from 2021. That's what was used to create the spreadsheet. I can show you that, and then I can show you the spreadsheet that I have that shows who has paid it since the letter went out and who hasn't. But but I don't. What I do not have is necessarily a record, a spreadsheet that has your property on it that shows every dime you've ever paid on it. I do not have that.
So I guess that's
because that came off the tax bills.
Yeah. So see,
And we can only go back to 2012 on the tax collector
how
site.
much what I'm paying has been paying through taxes, and how much through the water district has been a little unclear. So that's why I'm trying to get clarification.
Well, you have 3 assessments: phase 1, phase 2, and the general maintenance, and that's outlined on your tax bill.
And they have always been on the tax bill.
Yeah,
Right.
This first and foremost, I would love to come to every meeting, but I work full time. I have an 88-year-old mom and a husband had an aneurysm, and I am just stretched way too thin as it is. So I can't come to every meeting. So I do love the statement of trying to put more on the website and having more transparency, especially since we're growing at such a rapid rate. We all love this neighborhood. We've been here for a long time. And thank you to all of you guys that have been doing this without the pain and all of that.
But if you want to see me after the monthly meeting, I have my computer here. I can kind of show you what I can show you.
Again, I just want to have more understanding so that when I do retire, I'm not still paying things that I don't, if I ever retire, I should say, that I'm not still paying things that I shouldn't be paying. And if there's somebody that dropped the ball, like we know has happened in the past, that is this something that affected me because somebody else didn't do what they were supposed to do?
Yeah, I think the board just did not go and take that next step and say, okay, we're paying it off. So now how are we going to continue with those assessments for those persons who did not fully pay it off in advance? And there were 722 lots or individuals, pieces of property that had not paid it off. So it was the far majority of the landowners.
Yeah, well, again, when they did the culverts, one of mine didn't get the culvert put in, and I'm paying for all of that, so.
The side streets didn't get the culverts put in.
Well, we can talk more offline.
Yeah.
I just want to have an understanding better about it, so that's why. Thank you.
Thanks.
Jim, 1 second, I think we have another person who's waiting in line.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, just after her.
Hi,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Crystal Manning, and I've lived out since 2004, and I have a confession, this is my first meeting.
Better late than never.
I confess.
We hope you come to more.
Well, I just want to thank you all, because I don't have any complaints about living out there all this time, and the roads went in nice, and I really, really appreciate what you do, and I appreciate all the input given, but I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's a nice assembly. Yes, Steve.
The former board that paid this thing off improperly, did they consult their attorney on it?
Well,
No.
can I make a clarification? It wasn't paid off
No.
improperly.
There's-
It was just allocated to a different.
Jim, you were on the board at that time.
No.
It was,
You were on the board. Tell
I had just come on the board.
Okay.
It is. It's where it was. It's not that you don't still like owe it. It was just allocated to a to a different account that then made it come off the tax bill.
Well,
So
the money
you
that
don't.
was in that
So
account, where did it come from?
pardon me.
The money that was in the account that they took it out of, where did it come from?
They took it out of.
just explained that, but I'll do it
I know, but
again.
I'm saying, who put that money in there?
The
Prior
there are
board made the
three-
decision to
How
move
did
the
they
money.
They took it from the landowners, property.
They
No.
There
Go
are
ahead, go
three.
ahead, Mr.
Yes, sir. If I may. Again, there are three assessments. One of those assessments is the maintenance assessment. That maintenance assessment has a reserves component to it that is available for any expense of the district that the board approves payment for. And so there was a board meeting where the board chose to use those reserve funds, a part of the reserve funds from the maintenance assessment reserves to pay off the phase 2 loan to save the interest component that would have been charged had the loan not been paid off early. So that was a board decision. It was fully within their discretion to make that decision. They did not abuse their discretion in making that decision, and it was not a mistake, for the record. In addition to saying that, I will also add, as I have said before on a number of occasions, after that loan was paid off, that the phase 2 assessment money was used to pay off, then a letter was sent to the Department of Revenue saying, we paid off the phase 2 assessment loan, the bond is paid off. Please note, the Department of Revenue then made the adjustment so that no longer is the district able to collect the phase 2 assessment on the tax bill. It was a change in method of collecting the funds, the phase 2 assessment funds that occurred. It was not a change in whether those phase 2 assessment funds were still due or not, and they are still due, and that is why the board directed that the letter be sent to the landowners who still owe the phase 2 assessment that there's a different method of collection that the board is implementing, and that is to send the coupon and say, you can pay off the amount that's shown on the coupon this year and next year to pay off the balance of your phase 2 assessment. So there's a different collection method being used on the outstanding balance of the phase 2 assessment that is still owed by certain parcel owners in the district.
But my question didn't have anything to do with that. Where did that money that went into that account originally come from, that you took that out of to pay it off? Who put that money in there?
There are three assessments. One of the three assessments. If you want to answer the question, then answer the question. Oh, no, sir, I am giving you an answer. It's just not the answer you want or expected me to give you, and so you don't like the answer. But the answer to the question is there is a maintenance assessment. That maintenance assessment has a reserve component in it, and those reserve funds were used to pay off the phase 2 bond.
Mr. Pringle, may I say something, please? I think I know what Steve's saying. And basically, Steve, what happened was that in the fund it got taken out of, every resident in our subdivision put the money in that fund. So therefore, when whoever's assessment got paid off to save the interest, which they were trying to do as being a conservative thing for everybody, they took my money and they paid off John's loan. Okay, so they needed to put that money back into that reserve account that we had so that everybody is made whole and equal again. They only borrowed the money from them. They didn't have a right to really spend it. Am I correct? And therefore, at the end of the day, whoever has the yellow sheets that haven't paid off their money still owe that amount of money, and they ought to thank them for saving them the interest and lowering the amount of payment they have to pay.
But whoever owes that money, you're saying owes that money now, already put the money into the big fund that you took it out of.
But they only put
Not for
Steve,
that
they
purpose.
they only put
Not
part of
for
that
that
money in
purpose.
that account.
Those folks
It
get
wasn't
that
all
as
their
David
money.
says.
Correct.
It wasn't all their money. They only put part of it in. They put a piece of it in, I put a piece of it in, John put a piece of it in, and we were in different phases. We all put, that was not money that was that was due to pay off the phase that got paid off. So they borrowed the money from that account, basically, to pay off the loan, which now has to be repaid.
The maintenance assessment is divided equally between all property owners.
All property owners.
The phase 2 assessment had different, there were 3 units, I believe, in the phase 2 assessment. And so the parcel owners paid different amounts toward the phase 2 assessment based upon what unit they were in, unit 1, unit 2, or unit 3.
So San Carlos Estates money was used to pay off San Carlos Estates debt.
Not San Carlos Estate's debt, a portion of the people's debt, but then if you want.
As a whole.
Yes, sir.
As a whole.
But it was still
Money that we had as a whole to pay off a debt.
But 2/3 of that money, okay, basically it raised the amount of money. If I was paying my payment and I wasn't in the phase that got paid off, then basically they just raised the amount of money that I have to pay off on my side because my side helped pay theirs.
It changed the proportionate division of the assessment payoff from one parcel to the other. So that some, because you pay an equal amount for the maintenance assessment, and you may have been paying a lower amount for your unit in the phase 2 assessment, you might have paid more in the maintenance assessment component to pay off the loan than you should have.
So was anybody specifically financially harmed at the end of the day?
Some people in some units would have paid more, and if you were in a unit in the phase 2 assessment that paid a lower amount, then yes, you may have paid a little bit extra. And that's what the board's been trying to do from the beginning, is get the balance back in place so that the rightful payers on the phase 2 assessment will pay the rightful amount of their part of the phase 2 assessment back into the maintenance account, so it's all put back. And that's what this is to accomplish.
And
Yes.
everybody will be
Equal.
And it'll be all done and over.
But it wasn't a problem until the auditor found it. So what, if the auditor would have said anything, we'd be set, right?
No, we talked about it.
You want me to answer that question?
You better, because I don't know how to answer it.
Okay. The problem is the problem regardless of whether the auditor found it or not. The fact that the auditor found it is based upon the fact that the audit was done of those books at the time that we had a new auditor.
So back to my original question, was the former board that did that, did they consult with your attorney about this before they did it?
I was not at that meeting.
Oh, so you were the attorney?
Yes, I was the attorney. And I was.
That's why we have our attorney at the meetings. That was one of my first board meetings, and there was some discussion over the issue. It passed to move forward, and we all were responsible for that at the time. I have nothing else to tell you about it. It was done in the best interest of the people at the time. The thought was it was going to save you money. In essence, it did save you money.
And
You are a pain in the ass.
Okay, let's have order in the room, please.
I can't hear anything because she won't shut. No, you need to take it outside, lady. I'm done with you.
Okay, I'm calling for order in the room, please.
So, Mr. Chairman, I can also say that the timing of that occurring was the phase 2 assessment was at the place where the payoff amount was a small enough sum so that it could be paid off. So there were a lot of unique events that occurred at that time that resulted in the person who was there at the time, handling the treasurer at the time, saying to the board, here's the payoff that's left after you make this annual payment. This will be the payoff figure. Do you want to just pay it off and save the interest? I think that was the question based upon what I've seen in the record. And the answer was, okay, it'll save interest. Let's do it. That's all okay. Absolutely legitimate and within the legal parameters of the board's authority. Then the letter went to the Department of Revenue that said we've paid off the loan. That resulted in not being able to collect the phase 2 assessment on the tax collector's bill anymore. That's what I've been saying from the beginning. That's the issue. And so now there's just a new method of collecting the same dollars that's being used, and that's the letter and the coupon.
Okay, are we done with this?
Well, one more.
No?
What happens if they
Does
don't
it matter?
pay off?
Go ahead, Steve.
What are the legal ramifications?
Okay, I'm gonna have to ask you to stand up and come up if you wanna keep talking. I've asked
This is the last question.
I know, but if you wanna talk, you're gonna have to come up to the mic. I've asked everybody else to do it. Okay, I can't be unfair to everybody else in the room, and I know that you overtalk everybody, so you're good. Anybody else have a question, or we're gonna move on?
Actually, it's a good question though. So if he's not going to go up and ask it, I'm going to ask it.
Sure.
Please do. I wasn't questioning his question.
Basically, I guess now that it's on us to collect the remaining debt, and if everything was done by the tax collector before that, what happens if we cannot collect debt?
We put it back to the attorney.
Sure.
Go, Richard.
Sorry.
An assessment, a legally valid assessment of the district, which is what the phase 2 assessment is collectible by the district under the law, under chapter 298. It is a lien, it constitutes a lien against the property. And so it's a legally enforceable debt as a lien against the property that the district can use any number of methods to collect. But it is still a valid and enforceable obligation on the parcel of land that owes the money, that owes the assessment.
The lien's gone. The lien is gone.
No, sir, the lien is not gone.
It's not.
No, sir, the lien is not gone.
The county lien is gone.
No, sir, the county lien is not gone. No, sir, the county lien is not gone. And it's not a county lien anyway. It's a district lien under chapter 298 that is the assessment. And if you read the law completely, you will find that there are provisions in the law, chapter 298, that says that a valid assessment constitutes a lien against the property.
So just like any other lien, before that homeowner would want to sell it, it would come up in a title search and basically we collect their money.
We had the county be the enforcer of the lien before.
Now we're the enforcers.
Correct.
It's still a valid
So-
lien against the property. That's the bottom line.
So, Mr. Pringle, can I ask the question this way? When the lien was initially, when the assessment was initially approved by the judge, there wasn't automatically a lien put on every property in the community. What happens is if I fail to pay my assessment, then the community can go file a lien against my property to collect that assessment.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You may.
That's technically not correct.
Okay.
The law says that it is a lien against the property at the time that the bond validation final judgment was entered, saying that it was a valid assessment. It imposed the assessment on the property. It's the imposition of the assessment on the parcels of land in the district that benefit from the assessment that creates the lien aspect or the lien classification.
Guess what I was trying to get to? If I go out and look up in the Lee County property
Right.
search, am I going to find a lien against my property?
Give it to Richard.
The record, when you sell the property, and a title search is done, it is not going to show a separate lien like a mortgage. What you're talking about, I think, is a recorded mortgage lien or something like that that will pop up in a title search.
Yeah.
And it is not created by the recording of a document like the mortgage. It is created by the statute that says when it is properly imposed, when an assessment is properly imposed, it constitutes a lien against the parcel of land that benefits. So there's the difference. It's not going to show up in the official records of
That's
Lee
exactly
County.
what I'm getting at.
Yes.
So I can go do a lien search on my house.
You
I'm
won't
not
see
gonna
it.
find one.
You won't see it.
But if I don't pay that bill, I can't sell the property without paying that lien.
And the district has the authority to take action to collect that lien or to enforce that lien against the parcel of land if it wants to. It's just taking the soft approach to this point. That letter was a soft approach in an effort to say, there's an amount of money owed. Would you mind paying it? And here's the amount, and here's the coupon that goes with that. So,
Thank
To give everybody an idea of where we stand since the letters were mailed, we've had 145 responses, which is about 20% of the mailing. We've received about $26,366.79. The total lien amount that remains, or the total amount of remaining assessment, is $146,418.69. So the amounts that we've received so far represent about 18% of the total that was due and 30.5% of the amount that we expected to receive in this next fiscal year. So we've had, in my opinion, in the last month, we've had a fairly good response from the letters that were mailed out, and I'm hopeful that most people will understand what it's all about and continue with the payments voluntarily.
So I didn't receive something in my letter. I saw where it said, look at the following thing and see what the amount is.
Did you have, is your, did you, and then I have to look at your name and
Right.
your strap,
I have to ask you
but if you received a letter that just
about the board meeting.
about the board meeting without a yellow little sticky on the front and without a yellow little piece of paper inside, you're gold.
We paid, that means we paid. We were
Thank
already
you.
paid.
Okay, are we done with this now?
Yes, let's move
Okay.
on.
Put a motion on the floor to, we've ended the business of the landowners meeting. Put a motion on the floor that we adjourn this meeting. It's up to you guys to vote on it.
there's a second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Meeting is now adjourned. We are going to follow this by going into